with Sam Cedar.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Cedar.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Cedar.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Monday, February 24th, 2020. My name is Sam Cedar. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Bernie strikes gold in the silver state of Nevada. Meanwhile, never Trumpers, now never Berniers, and the media freak out. Supreme Court capitulates, covers for Trump, allows a wealth test for immigrants to go forward. Bernie Sanders briefed that Russia is trying to boost his campaign. Trump's too, but now Trump's denying it. Meanwhile, he dumps the director of national intelligence and replaces him with a right-wing Twitter troll. Incidentally, Trump also has an administration hit list. Meanwhile, the commander-in-chief is in India, being feted by a fascistic Modi.
Gotta be tough.
Gotta be really tough. Kennedy and Markey in a tight race in Massachusetts, according to polls. First time that a Kennedy would be in a tight race in a primary in Massachusetts, if you can believe it.
Let's go, Markey.
Indeed. Supreme Court to decide same-sex foster care question, apparently, and a federal court declares Medicaid work regulations illegal. EPA is pushing for more mercury in the air.
Cool.
And Trump hoping that a do-nothing strategy is best for dealing with a growing coronavirus potential pandemic. All this and more on today's program. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back from our vacation. As you can tell, maybe, from the sound of my voice, I had a cold the entire time, but I also threw out my back and could not get my kid to go to so-called ski school at the chintzy-ass mountain we were at until the last day when he's like, I really like it.
What? Ski school is awesome.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I should have had you talk to Saul about it because he refused to go for the first day. So I spent the whole day on the bunny hill teaching him to snowboard. Meanwhile, Mile is mad at me because she's got no one to snowboard with. But somehow, I don't know if it's Instagram or what, no matter where she is, she ends up finding friends she knows. And then a day two, Saul wouldn't even get out of the car. So we sat in the parking lot for an extended period of time while Mila snowboarded. And day three, he finally decided to go, and he loved it. And there was nobody else there because nobody else had vacation. So it was just him and some 15-year-old dude who was teaching him to snowboard. And Saul was in like 6.5-year-old kid heaven.
You got a private lesson.
Indeed, for like 3 hours. And then he's like, oh, I'll do more of it. I'm like, well, guess what? We're done.
Well, he'll know for next time.
Yes, I am willing to bet you everything I own that he will forget that. But that is exactly what I said to him. And he's like, well, if I get a 15-year-old, I'll do it. He's at the age where like boys his age, they get crushes on like other teenage boys.
Teenagers are cool.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm telling him. Like, there's nobody else who's teaching the ski school. They're not bringing in, this guy just came from the Olympics and now he's going to teach beginners, 6-year-old snowboarders. That's not happening. So,
I'm
and now
still
I also
intimidated by how cool teenagers are.
Yeah, well, believe me, I go through it every day. There's like the whole pack of them at my house now all the time. And now I feel bad because it seems like less people are snowboarding. And I thought that I switched to snowboarding so that my kids would, be cool. And now,
yeah, snowboarding's cooler, but skiing's easier to get started up.
It feels like everybody skis now. I don't know. But also, folks, I rarely do this, but if you know of a good physical therapist in Brooklyn, please email us at majorityreporters@gmail.com because I now have like some weird sciatica thing going down like my right hip.
That's new?
No, I had the old one on my left buttock, but that more or less went away.
Maybe it migrated.
And now, no, I know the moment it migrated was I was reaching, like it was even before I started snowboarding. It was literally, I was reaching for a heavy vase on a top shelf. I say vase now because of Bloomberg.
It's a picture of my future.
I'm doing, it's a picture of everybody's future. I got news for you. That's what people don't realize. You always think like it's not going to be me, the guy. Like, and I remember when people would say to me, like older people were like, I broke my hip. How? I opened a car door, or I opened a cabinet, and then my hip broke. So a lot went on, obviously, the past week. If you did not catch my debate wrap-up, which I did, it was a low-tech version. The quality of the audio is not fantastic. It's just me talking. Also on YouTube, you can see the debate analysis I did in real time. I did debate coverage. I'm going to try and put that up, but it was the audio quality I thought was dismal. I got to double-check it. But I will put it up for members in the member feed. And but if you want to go to YouTube, you can find it there too.
People like that real DIY aesthetic.
It was very DIY. I learned a piece of software in the 45 minutes. I put Saul to bed, and then I ran into my room, put up a sheet.
Brooklyn and sheet, I assume.
It was actually, I think, a Brooklyn and sheet. I should have branded that. I forgot. Then I learned that OBS thing is pretty easy. So, all right, let's get into this. Bernie Sanders had a rally in San Antonio, which I believe must have been, was it the next night in Nevada? What day was it? I think it was the day after Nevada. And I don't know that he gave a victory speech in Nevada. Did he? Oh, this was on 22nd. Oh, this was on Saturday? Yeah, Saturday night. Oh, okay. So this is a couple days after Nevada.
No, Saturday was the day of the caucus.
Oh, God. Oh, God. Someone help me. I have no idea what day it is today. Okay, so Saturday night, Bernie headed to Texas. Now, this is relevant for a couple of reasons. Bernie probably feels at this point that he is a lock may be too strong of a word, but he's got a very, very good shot in California to win big in California. Texas was Biden's second firewall, if you will. The first being South Carolina. The second was Texas. Texas, for Biden, was the place where he was going to mitigate Bernie Sanders running away with California. But the Sanders campaign clearly believes that that's not going to happen now. or that at the very least, there's a very good chance that Bernie may not win Texas, although he could. The last polling I saw, and this was from a month ago, I think, had him within 5 points. He could either win Texas at this point, or at the very least, split delegates with Biden and prevent Biden, essentially nullifying Biden's attempt to cut into his numbers in California. Now, a month ago, nobody was even talking about Bloomberg. Who knows where Bloomberg stands in any of this now, because he was so devastated in that debate. We'll talk a little bit more about the debate later in the program too. But if you go back and look at my recap, the too long don't read is Warren did a great job for her going in on Bloomberg in particular. In many respects, it shows the deficiency of her I don't want people to get freaked out about my saying that. From my perspective, it was frustrating because that is the Warren who should have showed up the first or second debate against Joe Biden. And anybody who says we saw what happened to Kamala Harris because of her going after Biden. The problem with Kamala Harris going after Biden was what happened in the days that followed. She basically said, I have the same policy as Biden. The one thing that Elizabeth Warren knows better than anyone on that stage is about the financial crisis and about things like the bankruptcy bill and whatnot. She could have gone in on Biden and gone after him for an extended period of time. Her campaign advisors told her to do some other, ridiculous stuff over the course of the coming weeks and months. And frankly, for me, Warren showed last night what Warren should have been throughout this campaign. And I think, in Nevada, it was certainly too late for her because half the people had already voted. I think Pete Buttigieg would have been completely decimated. Klobuchar would have been completely decimated. I don't think it would have come out of Sanders, frankly, at that point. Because I think, again, that just appealed to, and I think it's going to be too late for her across the board because she doesn't have the infrastructure. And frankly, the fact that it took that long to get to where she got was indicative of some of the reservations I have about her as a candidate in the general election. But we don't need to go into that.
Her political instincts are not the best.
That's honestly what I think it is. And I think, frankly, I think if Sanders felt differently about her political instincts a year and a half ago, I'm not even sure he would have run.
Yeah,
2 years
I think you're
ago.
right.
But
I talked about it with Michael the week before last too. I don't know. I mean, he acts like I'm being naive for ever having liked her, but she had a lot of credibility going into this that she sacrificed for not a lot in return. And I'm legit sad about it, but she could still redeem herself by dropping out and endorsing Bernie before she loses her own state on Super Tuesday.
Yeah, I don't know that she's going to do that, frankly. But
no, we said, she has bad instincts.
I think there is a lot of jeopardy involved in her staying in for Super Tuesday for Massachusetts. But I think we'll get a better sense of what she's going to do after South Carolina. But put that aside. In the debate, Sanders did exactly what he should be. He came off as the front runner, and he basically was above the fray. He took a couple whacks at Bloomberg as well. Bloomberg turns out to be a bit of a paper tiger, and now we know why he has been avoiding the debates, although, we knew that beforehand as well. And so the debate tomorrow night is going to be nuts, I think, because you're going to see Warren do that again. And Bloomberg is going to think that he's prepared for this one. And I got news for you. He won't be. But we will talk more about that. So Bernie Sanders on Saturday night, following his win in Nevada, heads to Texas and gives this speech in San Antonio, which I think could be the best speech that he has given, a non-policy based speech, in terms of just like a campaign rally speech. And he is pivoting in some respects to the general election strategy. Now, generally, what we've seen in the past, and even in 2016, we didn't see this quite as much, but you have someone who pivots from the left to the right. But the thing that I think is really, and we're going to get into this when we play all the clips of the freakouts that are happening, particularly on MSNBC. That's where most people see them. Their understanding of what right and left are is wrong. Their understanding of how I think the electorate views this race is wrong. It's wrong in so many different ways. But we will get to that specifically there. But what Sanders does here at this rally in San Antonio, and he does it coming off of Nevada, which has been so far the most diverse electorate that the Democrats have faced in a primary, and probably is, more or less about as diverse as you can get. And Sanders won in virtually every single cohort. In fact, the only cohort that he didn't win that was significant was above age 65. And it's a big cohort. It's the biggest age cohort that there is. He did not win that one. But in every other cohort, it doesn't matter in terms of, you break it down in terms of gender, if you break it down in terms of union, non-union, if you break it down in terms of Latino or Black or Caucasian or Asian.
It's a rainbow coalition.
It really is. And here he is going after Donald Trump and fusing his attacks on Donald Trump with a call for justice across the various planes of our existence within society.
We are going to win across the country because the American people are sick and tired of a president who lies all of the time. They are sick and tired of a corrupt administration. They are sick and tired of a president who is undermining American democracy, who thinks he is above the law, and who apparently has never read the Constitution in this country. The American people are sick and tired of a government which is based on greed, corruption, and lies. They want an administration which is based on the principles of justice. Economic justice, social justice, racial justice, and environmental justice. Now, Trump and his friends think they are going to win this election. They think they're going to win this election by dividing our people up based on the color of their skin or where they were born or their religion or their sexual orientation. We are going to win because we are doing exactly the opposite. We're bringing our people together.
And that's and we'll have more of that speech to play. But that's more or less how he starts out. And it expresses what they were able to do in Nevada. Here is just the, this is the Washington Post entrance polls. Not 100%, accurate, whatnot, but it gives you a rounding out things. And they break it down. Groups that candidates are winning by 6 or more percentage points. Ages 17 to 29. This is all the ones that Sanders won. 17 to 29 plus 54. Plus 54 percentage points. Prefer candidates who agrees with you on issues. Plus 42. Independents or something else. Plus 37. Hispanic Latino plus 34%. This is by how much they won. By how much they won.
A huevo.
Support changing to a single government health plan, 33%. Ages 30 to 44, 33%. Very liberal, 32%. Other, 30%. I'm not even sure other what. Top issue, income inequality, won by 22%. First-time caucus goers, won by 22%. No college degree, won by 22%. Men, won by 21%. Top issue, healthcare, won by 19%. Decided before the last few days, won by 18%. Not a union household, 17%. Union household, remember, one of the biggest unions in the country got into a huge fight with him. Won it by 13%. Or I should say the biggest unions in Nevada. Women won by 13%. Top issue, climate change, won by 12%. Somewhat liberal, won by 12%. Democrats, won by 10%. College graduates, won by 10%. Ages 45 to 64, won by 10%. White, won by 10%. Attended previous caucus, won by 9%. Now, Biden won black folk by 12%. He won ages 65 and older by 10%. Opposing changing a single health care plan by 6%.
But he's so divisive, though.
Who, Biden?
Bernie.
Oh, Bernie. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, is he just cleaned up across the board. Like I say, the one that he lost was people over the age of 65. We will get into that later in the program because I got a good thread from somebody that I thought was actually pretty good and worth reading about them explaining to their parents why Bernie Sanders.
Yeah, but it's cheating when people talk to their parents.
Well, who said that? You're not supposed to do that?
I've seen some like really bad galaxy brain centrist takes on Twitter, like, all you young Latinos who talked to your parents about Bernie Sanders, that's cheating.
It's just bizarre, the level of desperation that's involved in this. And it's encouraging on some level because you would think at this point, if the kitchen sink was somehow like in somebody's vault, they would have brought it out and thrown it at Sanders.
Wait, did you hear that Bernie said something positive about Cuba?
I did hear that.
Oh no, all those Cuban Americans who were totally going to vote for a Democrat aren't now.
The Oppo has arrived.
The Oppo has arrived. Now, of course, we've got the debate coming tomorrow night. Before we go, I got to do some ads, but before we get there, just want you to know that Michael Bloomberg is practicing for this debate this time, by all accounts. We have some inside footage. Can't say where we got this, but you probably, if you look carefully, you can see we got it from Twitter. Inside footage of Michael Bloomberg testing out a new campaign slogan. Here it is. And for some reason, in his debate prep, he had everybody dress like they were from the cast of Mary Poppins, and he was playing the role of a nanny. And here it is.
I'll tell you where I'm going. First, Iowa, then New Hampshire. Maybe I can get the whole country to behave.
A lot of people wish they could have just left him hanging up there.
That is such a
turn
cursed
off
video.
the lights. You know what's amazing about that? It's such a perfect metaphor because it's not that he, I think the low hanging fruit is obviously that he thinks he's the nanny, but he doesn't. He thinks that he honestly is some type of demigod, some type of form of deity. And that he is amongst us, and maybe I just got this on the mind between doing Harry Potter with Saul and also reading this big Greek mythology book with him for like a 3 months. We were reading it. I think he feels like he has an obligation as a deity to help the mortals. But of course, they're mortals. So it's not like they don't get to have a lot of free will. And, it's his responsibility as a deity to do these things. So he does feel some obligation to the mortals, but not significant one. And we have video of him talking about Medicaid that I think is the most disturbing thing that you can see. Like talk about shark eyes. This guy. And if you take that frame and you look at every video that's put out there and every comment that he's made, if you just for a moment, that leaves your mouth agape, if you just for a moment just presume that Bloomberg thinks he is a deity and that he has an obligation to people to do stuff for them as one would a deity to the mortal people.
Or a nanny to children.
Right, but nanny almost implies like you're hired and like you're a surrogate. He thinks he's the whole kit and caboodle. And so I think it's very, very telling. We'll play that clip in a bit. First, I want to get to this. The first thing I did when I came in today was to search our boxes of Liquid IV to see if we had that Liquid IV. They call it the energy multiplier. It's like a matcha tea thing they have. It is, many people talk about daily fatigue. I have it, when I come in and I've had the cold, I want to get like a little bit of a boost, but I don't want to drink one of those junky drinks. Their Liquid IV energy multiplier gives you sustained energy throughout the day. It's a great all-natural alternative to those processed energy drinks. The premium matcha and green energy blend tastes delicious. It provides a lasting energy boost throughout the day. Maybe over the past couple of weeks, you've seen it occasionally I have a green bottle of water. Then I pour it into my glass. It's like a couple of cups of coffee without the crash. Liquid IV's energy multiplier contains the mixture of teas and herbs that are high in antioxidants. They help improve mood and focus without any artificial flavors or preservatives. The cellular transport technology, I don't know what that means, but it works. Delivers enhanced rapid absorption into the bloodstream. It gives you a boost fast. It's non-GMO. It's vegan. It's free of gluten, dairy, and soy. Free of all of it. Here is the saddest part of that story that I started. I got here. I had used it all. Got to get more. We have the other flavors, and I took a hit of that, and that's good because it keeps me hydrated. Particularly, I feel like in the wake of a cold, I'm dehydrated. But I'm not saying I got addicted to that matcha thing. They probably don't want that out there. But I love that stuff. Hint, hint, if you're listening, Liquid IV. Get 25% off when you go to liquidiv.com. Use the code MAJORITYREP at checkout. That's 25% off anything you order on Liquid IV's website. Just go to liquidiv.com, enter the promo code MAJORITYREP to save 25% and get better hydration and energy. And folks, remember, these comes in little packets. So you can travel on the plane with these things. You can put them in your backpack, carry them around, get some water, drop it in. Super easy. Much better way of doing it. Don't wait. Start fueling your adventures today. Meanwhile, postage rates have gone up again. Thankfully, Stamp.com eases the pain with big discounts off of post office retail rates. Stamps.com, you save 5 cents off of every first-class stamp and up to 40% off of shipping rates. Now, when you got a small business, maybe you're selling merch, which we got the merch coming soon. I kid you not. We got samples on the way. We're all union made, right? All union made. And it's going to be on palm leaf. All of our shirts are made out of palm leaf. No, that's not true. That kind of savings really adds up, folks. When you're doing a small business or whatnot, if you're doing, Film Guy Matthew sending out all his eBay stuff, since Stamps.com is completely online, it saves time and money. Anything you can do at the post office, you can do at Stamps.com. You personally print official U.S. postage 24/7 for any letter, any package, any class of mail for anywhere in the world. Once your mail is ready, you just drop it in a mailbox. With Stamps.com, you get discounted postage rates that you can't even get at the post office. They must buy bulk. That's what it is, big time. It's a fraction of the cost of those expensive postage meters. There's no equipment to lease, no long-term commitments. It's no wonder over 700,000 small businesses already use Stamp.com. Right now, listeners get a special offer that includes a 4-week trial plus free postage and a digital scale without any long-term commitment. Just go to Stamps.com, click on the microphone at the top of the homepage, and type in Majority Report. That's Stamps.com. Enter the coupon code Majority Report. And lastly, I've said this a million times before, you may not need to hire right now, but the best time to look for someone is when you don't need to hire somebody. You don't want a situation where you get your 2 weeks notice or whatever. Maybe someone doesn't give you the 2 weeks notice. Maybe you've been a jerk and you haven't deserved it or whatnot. But you wanna be able to reach out to people that you have contacted already. And as you know, around here, election year, we're going to hire a president. Well, you could talk about how tough it is to determine who is qualified. Even if you research each political candidate, of course, we've done that here. We've already figured out who it is, Bernie. But thankfully, every role is not this difficult to fill, especially when there's ZipRecruiter. Today, you can try ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.com/majority. What ZipRecruiter does is they send your job to over 100 of the web's leading job sites, but they don't stop there. They have some type of matching technology. ZipRecruiter scans thousands of resumes to find people with the right skills and experience and actively invites them to apply to your job. You can even add the screening questions for your job listing so you can filter candidates and focus on the best ones. ZipRecruiter is so effective that 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. When are they going to contact me to talk about my ZipRecruiter story? I should be in every one of their ads across the board. That's how we got Brendan. It was awesome. We got a lot of different candidates. I interviewed a lot of really quality people. Brendan was honestly, if I had constructed Brendan in a laboratory, I don't think that he would have been better than what ZipRecruiter did.
Wow.
Yeah. Talk about Michael Bloomberg thinking he's a deity. Hey, try ZipRecruiter for free. My listeners can go to ZipRecruiter.com/majority. That's ZipRecruiter.com/majority. How do you spell majority, Sam? MAJORITY. I had to think about that. ZipRecruiter.com/majority. ZipRecruiter, it's the smartest way to hire. All right, so let's get back into this. Bernie Sanders won big in Nevada. That was when basically the crap hit the fan. I mean, we saw the crap hitting the fan. You know what? First we're going to do is the roundup. A lot of news I missed the last week. I'm going to do this very quickly. I'm going to do it in like 3 minutes. A bunch of stories. You ready? This is going to go quick, folks. All right, here we go. Supreme Court on Monday said it's going to take up a dispute between the city of Philadelphia and a Catholic charity over the suitability of same-sex parents to provide foster care. Right? Can you believe we're having this argument? Now, the issue is about so-called religious freedom. How much can now obviously a Catholic church can discriminate, say only Catholics can be priests. But if they're doing something that is not religious, like being an adoption agency, can they discriminate based upon their beliefs? Like, in other words, if they can do it to same-sex couples, why couldn't they say, like, oh, we don't think mixed race couples. We're not into that either. That's against our religion.
Yeah, I mean, they could. Well,
not up until now, because this is a 30-year-old decision that has been decided at the Supreme Court that in that function they can't. This Supreme Court may have something different to say about it. Meanwhile, an appeals court on Friday, the D.C. Circuit Court. Go back and listen to what we've talked about the D.C. Circuit Court. That was a court that it was Harry Reid's getting rid of the filibuster that allowed the Democrats to make sure that that court was filled with Democratic-leaning appointees. Second most important court in the country. 3-judge panel of the U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit ruled that Trump's health officials had been arbitrary and capricious in allowing Arkansas to launch a Medicaid program called Arkansas Works 2 years ago, which required a job requirement to get Medicaid. D.C. Circuit, the 19-page opinion was written by a jurist appointed by Ronald Reagan. The panel's other judges, an appointee of Barack Obama, and one appointed by Jimmy Carter. Why do I tell you that? Because when you think about the 180 judges that Trump has appointed on the federal judiciary, know that they will be there for 40 years. Jimmy Carter left office in 1980, folks. 1980. And one of his judges just kept Trump from imposing a work requirement on Medicaid. Meanwhile, this is good news for those of you who want to see it all go away. 4 of the warmest Januaries have occurred since 2016. You do the math. So far, this winter has been one of the warmest on record for much of the United States. Obviously, a tremendous amount of bad effects, ranging from like ticks that you couldn't even believe that didn't exist in Maine now. I mean, it's going to happen all across the country.
I did ride my bike to work today, though, so that was nice.
Yeah, enjoy it while it lasts, folks. In eastern Kentucky, has been completely underwater for the past couple of weeks. Central Appalachia has experienced catastrophic flooding once again in the first 2 weeks of February. More than 8 inches of water fell, causing Cumberland and Kentucky rivers to reach their highest level in 40 years. More than 200 homes have been damaged. Nearly 100 more have been devastated. There have been more than 100 high water rescues. Meanwhile, over the break, a National Association of Federal Judges was playing around with calling an emergency meeting to address growing concerns about the intervention of Justice Department officials and Donald Trump in politically sensitive cases. Also, this is great. Greyhound will no longer consent to warrantless searches by Border Patrol agencies. They announced on Friday it's stop allowing ICE agents to conduct warrantless immigration checks aboard its buses. Greyhound had previously said it believed federal law required them to comply with border agents' requests aboard its buses, regardless of whether they had warrants or not. That was a practice that began to ramp up in 2018. In a statement, Greyhound now says it will tell the Department of Homeland Security, under which a CBP falls, that it will no longer assent to warrantless searches of private areas of its company, including buses, terminals, and company offices. They plan to develop training to ensure drivers and other employees follow the new policy. Send them an email.
Hell yeah.
Go on Twitter and just say congratulations and thank you.
Definitely. Did you see?
A little late, but it should have happened.
Did you see the story about the bus driver, the Greyhound bus driver, who told the ICE agent to gargle his balls?
No, I did not, but I would like. We should look that up and play that. I would like to see that.
Hero.
Meanwhile, EPA is about to change a rule that cuts mercury pollution, or I should say, change a rule that had cut mercury pollution. Listen to this. Exelon, one of the nation's largest utilities, told the EPA that its effort to change a rule to cut emissions of mercury and other toxins is, quote, an action that is entirely unnecessary, unreasonable, and universally opposed by the power generation sector. In other words, the companies that this regulation was imposed upon to cut mercury, a neurotoxin, in our air is coming out and saying, don't roll back the rules. We don't want you to.
Closest planet to the sun.
I've been feeling a little too sane lately.
Kathy,
I get the Hatter disease.
Exactly. Kathy Robertson, a senior management for environmental policy at the group, said the industry long ago complied with the rule, and it works. The sector has gotten so much cleaner as a result of this rule. First off, digest this part of the story, but also remember every time industry complains about one of these rules, it's going to destroy them, which they all did when the Obama administration rolled this out. They're full of it. Despite a course of opposition from unions, business groups, and electric utilities, EPA is on the verge of finalizing its proposal as a broader effort to overhaul how the government calculates the health benefits of cleaner air. Coal executives have lobbied for it, arguing it represented one of the worst excesses of what President Trump calls the war on coal. The agency plans to declare, one more time here, that it's not appropriate and necessary for the government to limit harmful pollutants from power plants, even though every utility in America has complied with its standards put in place in 2011 under Obama. While it will technically keep existing restrictions on mercury in place, it means the government will not be able to count collateral benefits, such as reducing soot and smog, when it sets limits on air toxic pollutants. In other words, they do a balancing test. They find the benefits on one side and the detriments on the other side. The detriments are always economic. Okay, which fine. I mean, the safest speed for us to drive would be about 5 miles an hour, but there's detriments to that. You don't get to places on time and whatnot. But what they're doing is they take this scale and they see where it ends up. Things like how many cancers does it cause? What's it doing to the environment? Is on the benefit side. How much does it cost is on the detriment side. What they're doing is they're taking a couple of categories off the benefit side and putting it on the side. And that's basically it. And that, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, and lastly, let's just do this one since we're here. We're going to have to talk more about this as we go forward. The CDC insisted on being left out of a press release when the State Department and the Trump administration overrode them about flying 14 Americans with the coronavirus back from the country. I think they were in Japan. So you have the Trump administration overruling the CDC. Why are they doing that? Story in the Washington Post. President Trump has lavished praise on President Xi Jinping for his handling of the growing coronavirus outbreak, a posture some in his administration are growing increasingly uncomfortable with. Why are they going? Because they're concerned about China's lack of transparency and the handling of the epidemic. Worries about rattled financial markets and their effect on the economy, as well as delicate negotiations with China over trade deal, a key to Trump's re-election, have played a large role in influencing the president's friendly posture toward China over the deadly coronavirus. What are the implications of this? U.S. and international health experts have for weeks expressed concerns that China's not been fully transparent about the breadth of the outbreak, and that a crackdown on doctors who tried to sound the alarm in December. U.S. officials still do not have the information they repeatedly asked for from China, which some have argued warrants a tougher line from the United States. Why do you think they want this information? Because they're trying to figure out how it spreads and how to prevent it from spreading. So far, the U.S. has 15 confirmed cases, though officials have warned they expect to see more on Sunday. The director of the U.S. National of Allergy and Infectious Diseases told the Washington Post that 44 Americans who were traveling on the Diamond Princess cruise in Japan have been infected. Although the United States so far effectively contained the virus, some senior administration officials said there have been tensions within the administration over what information the president should receive, his posture towards China, and what message to send to the American public. Several officials said there's been too much focus on evacuating Americans overseas and too little on what to do if the epidemic spreads within the United States. In other words, Trump doesn't want to rattle the markets, so he's basically shutting down the U.S. response to this. Folks, this could be a real problem in the next coming months. A real problem. And with that said, that is our roundup of the news.
Don't sleep on those flu shots either, folks.
Yeah, well, the flu shots...
Flu kills way more people than coronavirus in this country.
That's true.
Who knows if the flu shot this year was geared toward coronavirus?
No, it wasn't.
Yeah.
It wasn't. And my understanding is that the efficacy of the flu shot this year was pretty low as it goes, which is around 40%, 45%. That's still... It's much better situation to protect you 4 out of 10 times that you would otherwise get it.
Can you imagine, like China, I do believe is better at enforcing quarantines than the United States. Can you imagine all the people who would just be forced to go to work with coronavirus in this country?
Not only is that a problem. Not only is like I do not believe for a moment that there's anybody even thinking about what they would do with a policy about that. There's been no talk about, like, we don't know what's happening in China. Supposedly, they may be starting to get it contained or not. But we get a lot of our vaccines from China. We get a lot of our iPhones.
We get a lot of our everything from
China. I have a relative who's in medical inventory, and talking to them about this, it's not to get too paranoid, but they're saying like we're like low on masks. We can't get anything out of that country, so we're running low on this stuff. And like that's the communication is we're not able to get the medical supplies that we expect.
Yes, and so there's no planning without knowing what's happening there. We can't get on it, but Trump is afraid that it will hurt his reelection chances. It's a scary story. I'm going to be interviewing somebody, hopefully on Ring of Fire this week, about that dynamic. And if I'm able to get the person I want to get, I'll let you know about it and check it out, and we'll get into that. All right, let's briefly just get to the Sanders freakout because, and we'll play more clips as we go. But I got one really interesting. Twitter thread that I don't know how I came across it, but let's play, I don't know, of all the freakouts here, which one do you think is the... Yeah, this is pretty good. Look, reporters are human beings. They have preferences for candidates. I can understand that. I don't think there's anything bad about that. I think they've got to do their best to be objective, and I think you've got to have a mix of reporters so that at the very least, the product you put out at the end of the day has some form of balance, right? I mean, we're not a news organization here. We aggregate the news, and I'm a news reader, but we're pretty upfront with who we support. And I think, you could get away with doing that too. I mean, it's quite apparent that they don't have any Sanders supporters at MSNBC. I think I might be the only paid contributor who I think is like clearly a supporter of Sanders, or even maybe I think they may have maybe some people who come on who are supporters of Warren. I'm not 100% sure about that. But here is a report. And I'm not sure who it is. Chris Jansen. She's a perfectly nice person. I've met her there. She seemed perfectly nice. She is on the ground in a Nevada caucus and reporting on. And Bernie Sanders won Latino voters by 51%. That's how much he won by. She's at a caucus, and apparently either Chris Jansen wanted someone else to win the Latino support or is just exhausted at reporting about Latinos.
Largely people of color. Of those, the majority are Latino, and they are clearly, at least from eyeballing it, strongly in favor of Bernie Sanders, with Joe Biden coming in second.
On the one hand, I think it's possible she could be exhausted. But on the other hand, isn't it part of your job to know what kind of, spin you're putting on the words that you're saying.
I think you got to have a little bit more self-awareness to be able to say, like, I mean, maybe you could be tired, but at that point you go like, I'm here at this this caucus. And then say, and it's mostly Latinos, and they're supporting Bernie Sanders.
That was like a Michael sigh.
Yeah, that was a huge Michael sigh. That was like, maybe somebody said off mic to like, hey, Chris, what are you wearing?
Adidas jacket?
Yeah. Wasn't there some group that announced their who won and they were mocking that? Do we have that audio of, I mean, this type of freak out, it's consistent with what we've seen, and at least she didn't, mean to editorialize.
At least she didn't say anything racist.
Right. I mean,
I feel like people will start doing that the more we see people of color voting for Bernie.
Right. I mean, at least she didn't go like,
I'm not racist. I'm just disappointed.
This is gonna make Nevada very hostile to everybody who, or something like that, or there could be mass shootings, or, something to that effect. But this became a bit of a meme, and some members of I guess it was a caucus that was announcing or who won their caucus decided to turn it into a bit of a joke. And here it comes. It's going to come in a moment. But this is going across the board. I mean, I can tell you that I went out to dinner. Well, here is everybody announcing it at. This is some caucus and with I think some casino workers, because it's being held in a hotel. Here it is. This is, and who's texting this out? Who's tweeting it out? Anila Mieja. Okay, here we go. Bernie won that one.
Yeah. They're funny.
But I will tell you this. I have, most of the people I come into contact with when I go out, unless it's, like good friends, like when I go out peripherally, right? Like, a friend of a friend's birthday party or something like that. Or, or people who are like a little bit older than me, where I'm going to like my cousin's, grandparent, that type of thing. These are people who are sort of like very mainstreamy Democrats. They probably in the past have expressed like some concern that Bernie Sanders can't win this and that. Not super hostile, but not, PMOCs or whatever. And the number of those people who have said to me in the past month and a half, 2 months, what's going on with MSNBC? I can't even watch it anymore. It's all Republicans. And I'm like, it's been like this for 3 years. But I think to a certain extent, once impeachment ended, some of this is coming out. And this is a dynamic that I talked about during the Bush administration, where like it was very hard when everybody was against Bush. It was very hard to know that people were your allies were actually, their politics were very different. And I think even for these folks who are the prime targets audience for MSNBC, I think there's a lot of people sort of waking up and going like, hey, wait a second. What? And it's creating a very interesting dynamic.
Well, usually that kind of unifying force just leads to the sort of moderate or centrist or whatever you want to call it being on top. But we're at a weird point now where it actually says these guys should fall in line behind Bernie.
I mean, it's going to be weird. It's going to be weird because all of a sudden 2 values are going to come into conflict for a lot of these people, which is Trump is the greatest threat to our democracy in our lifetime. And wait a second, I don't want somebody who's actually on the left to be president. And it's going to be interesting to see how they navigate it.
It's going to be so good.
But I would also say to people, it is very important in my mind. I mean, people do whatever they want, but I personally will tell you how I'm going to behave in this situation. And part of it is, pull up this clip number 10. Bernie Sanders, it's not over. It is not over. And people should get out there and knock on as many doors as possible, and they should be phone banking. It is not over.
He needs to win it outright so they can't pull anything at the convention.
There is no doubt in my mind. Jamie is absolutely right. If Bernie Sanders is up by double digits going in, if it's, he's got 33% of the vote or more, and then his nearest competitor has 23%, no way. I do not believe there is any way in hell, no matter how much money Michael Bloomberg has or whatever, or anybody will get that nomination. A, they'd be an idiot to accept it because they're going to lose. And B, anybody who cares about the Democratic Party would be an idiot to push for something like that because it's going to destroy the Democratic Party. And frankly, I believe they're smart enough to not do that. What they would rather do is allow Bernie to lose in the general election. And we can talk about that later. But if you want a little example, see Martha Coakley in her run against Scott Brown about 10 years ago. She was from Western Massachusetts. Massachusetts is an old boy network. They basically said, we're going home, guys. Good luck, Martha. And see how that goes. Put that aside. The point is that Sanders has, I don't know what Nate Silver would say, but I think probably 80 to 90% chance of winning right now by those 10 points. If it's like 3 or 4 points, it's quite possible it goes to a second round, and maybe they think they can get away with it. I mean, it's certainly within the rules. I mean, that's the way it's set up. But it's got to be close for them to even contemplate it, unless they're completely insane, in which case, forget about it. The point being, the thing to do now is to work as hard as you can for Sanders to make sure he has that type of lead, but also to be aware that you don't get extra points for being right about something. You can feel good about it, but if you're going to put, and when I say you, I'm talking about what I'm going to do. And I'm just giving a version of how people can behave to build upon this, to be strategic. Crapping on candidates, particularly ones that are closest and most likely to become Sanders supporters sooner rather than later, is unstrategic at best. And petty and dumb, and then I have a whole list of words for it after that. Here's an example of why that's the case. This is Future Bird on Twitter. She put this up, she posted this just yesterday.
That's my Elizabeth Warren sign. It's hanging in our apartment, and I think it's really cool because all of the people in these big apartments here could see it. But, as promised, I'm going to take it down now. This is sad for me. I still like Elizabeth Warren. But listen, we've got to win. And I thought that by now Liz Warren would have a lot more support from minority voters. And I thought that by now she would be a little bit more in the lead, and that maybe she would have won over some of these stubborn moderates. But after seeing the way that Bernie's reached out to Latino voters in Nevada, I'm feeling a lot more optimistic about him being able to win. The thing is, we're all going to have to work together to make that happen. It's going to be all hands on deck. We can't let our feelings get in the way.
And that goes both ways, right? That goes both ways.
I've been saying.
It's one thing, indeed. It's one thing to go after, MSNBC hosts or media figures. It's another, at this point, to go too hard, particularly at candidates for whom their support comes from people where Bernie is number 2. You want to bring those people on. You want to be strategic.
I don't know who you could possibly be talking about.
I'm talking about a whole slew of people. A whole slew of people that I see. I mean, I'm just, and it's a general type of thing too. I mean, in general, like, you know, this is not about you. Remember, not me, us is the point. A lot of people need to be thinking about that, particularly now going forward. Be strategic.
Be a happy warrior.
Indeed. All right. So lastly, the other, the big cohort that Bernie Sanders lost in Nevada, he lost African Americans by about 10 points, but he came in second. He got crushed with people over the age of 65. And so one of the things that you should be doing is talking to your parents. I know some of you are the parents in this situation. But many of you have parents who are over the age of 65. I saw this great I have no idea who this kid is. I mean, he's not a kid. This guy, Eric Kingsbury on Twitter. I don't know who he is. I don't even know how I saw it. But he wrote, full disclosure, I'm an older millennial, born in 1988. Now, I only stop here because it took me about, 4 or 5 minutes to recover from that. Because that's when I graduated college.
He's exactly the age of millennial that I am.
There you go. That to me is a little bit upsetting. But I got past that. A white college-educated guy and a Warren supporter. I was a tepid Hillary supporter in 2016 primary in general, but my sympathies have always been on the left. Still, I'm a New Deal liberal, not a Democratic socialist. So my boomer father asks, why does Bernie have so much appeal? Simply, the complete failure of the previous generations to reckon with the crisis they caused and perpetuated have left the young people very, very angry. Just in the last 20 years, I've seen people who are supposed to know what they were doing and do the right thing fail over and over again, starting with the Supreme Court discrediting itself in the 2000 election, and then intelligence failures leading to 9/11 and Iraq. I would quibble with the idea of intelligence failures, but I mean, let's read it broadly. There's some of these things I will quibble with, but so what? This is what I'm talking about in terms of attitude. Keep the eyes on the prize. And then Katrina, and then the financial crisis, and the housing crisis, and the student debt crisis, and now the election of, and then acquittal of Donald Trump. There are many more crises and failures I could add in there too. And that's ignoring rampant inequality, the continuation of policies that treat people of color as second-class citizens, the war on voting rights and democracy more generally, and the refusal to even acknowledge the existential threat to humanity that is climate change. People who are supposed to be the serious and sober experts, the elites, have failed again and again, and now a large movement of people are in thrall of an ideology that pretty much boils down to a, quote, F you to the suggestion they listen or compromise with those same elites. Over the last 40 years, there have been opportunities to address these issues, most of which are not partisan, with a small ball or moderate solution. They could have turned the ship of state 5 degrees at a time, which over decades ends up being huge, but they didn't. That is true. That is true. We would be at we would be above a $15 minimum wage at this point, had they simply continued to raise it with inflation. I mean, just as one example. Or we could be way ahead of where we are with emission standards. We could be way ahead on just all sorts of different things. Climate. I mean, just across the board. And now we're left in a place where young people are tired of waiting and believe we must make dramatic changes all at once because we didn't make small tweaks over time. This is especially true with climate. where the science suggests catastrophe without massive efforts. Bernie's, in quote, revolution, and to a lesser extent Warren's appeal, is mainly premised on exhaustion with the status quo that has failed to address crisis after crisis with even half measures. Sanders has the additional appeal of being viewed as an outsider who is not a capitalist. This is genuinely a crisis, and I don't think older people on the center left or those in the DC NYC elite have really grappled with how much of a role they've played in getting us here. Compromise is foundational to democracy, and a large, angry constituency is turning against it. There was thought that Trump's election might wake people from their complacency, but even the hashtag resistance is only pining for a return to the, quote, good old days of the early Obama administration, which still saw a failure to address so many of the structural issues plaguing America. Parens, and I say this as someone who agrees almost entirely with what the Obama administration did from 2009 to 11. I can quibble with a few things, but there wasn't much else the administration could have done with the system and Congress they had at the time. And parentheses, again, I could quibble with this, but that's not part of my agenda now, remember? When people wonder why Biden's candidacy of restoration doesn't appeal, it makes sense. Same with Bloomberg and Pete, who both represent an ideology that pairs social liberalism with minor tweaks to the status quo. Democrats have been trying that for decades with little success. Young people, specifically college-educated ones, are ready for a big change. It seems like the plurality of the Democratic Party is as well. Polls suggest otherwise for a nation as a whole. And people of color, long accustomed to only marginal improvements, seem skeptical. And regardless of the outcome of the election, this anger will continue to boil until these crises are addressed in significant ways. A sizable chunk of the Democratic electorate won't accept half measures. What that means, the future of democracy or capitalism, is hard to say. With that in mind, the appeal of Sanders is understandable, maybe even reasonable. That's why he should probably be favored to win the Democratic nomination. And the sooner the rest of the party and the elite comes to grips with what has inspired Sanderism, the better we'll be. One thing I neglected to mention explicitly is that some of this anger is driven by the failure to hold any elites accountable for all their failures. And then he goes on to read a quote from Sanders going after that dynamic with, I welcome the hatred of crooks who destroyed our economy, et cetera, et cetera. And the last thing he says, I should note that my father was very upset about all of this. Tried to cut me off multiple times and said, we don't have to talk about this right now. He's pathologically conflict averse and, like much of his generation, refuses to see his role in any of this. My experience is you do it, they try and cut you off, you say your piece, and that's it. But I mean,
don't expect any change in the moment at all.
Never, ever, ever. I would say that of just about everybody, whether you're talking to your 5-year-old, your 14-year-old, your 75-year-old, whatever it is, or, your husband, your wife.
My friends did convince one person to vote for Bernie when they were canvassing, and he told them that, like, explicitly. Doesn't happen that much, but it's cool.
Yeah, and this thing, I mean, we will put a link to it in the podcast description, because I think this is someone coming from who's, a little more towards the center from where I'm coming from and where from maybe some of you are coming from. But I would imagine he's also right up the alley of where some of our listeners are. And certainly the way that he's talking to his father in this case, I think is really important. And again, it's very hard, I think, for people of that generation and to a certain extent of my generation. I am not a boomer, contrary to popular opinion and aspiration.
Okay, boomer.
Which is exactly what a boomer would say. Nobody wants to feel like, oh, we messed up everything forever. Like we were too lazy or self-involved or too greedy as a generation or as an individual to do anything about it. And so we're either going to be in denial about it, or we're going to say you're just kids are being kids or whatnot. But the reality is the situation is fundamentally different, at least in terms of the trajectory of the United States. You know, we haven't had a generation that's going to do worse than their parents.
Well,
and at least not in the modern era. And
well, I think we also need to bring a class analysis into this. I remember reading a statistic saying that part of the reason that older people tend to be more conservative now is because the ones who survived into old age were more likely to have money than the ones who didn't, and more likely to have, well, I guess we all have Medicare now, but you know, and that made a lot of sense. Also, I think
the actuarial charts, life expectancy has increased by something like 10 years for people in the top half of the income distribution. In the bottom half of the income distribution, it has gone up. And I'm talking 10, 15 years since Social Security was implemented. For the bottom half, maybe a year and a half.
It's an electoral advantage.
And I've often said that boomer hatred is the class hatred of fools, because there are plenty of old people who are struggling and who should be receptive to Bernie's message, certainly. There are also plenty of old people who aren't struggling now but could still benefit from something like long-term care. But if you want to talk about the generations historically, I've been thinking about this a lot lately, how the welfare state is kind of a victim of its own success. If you want to talk about the New Deal and the Great Society, these programs created a middle class in this country, especially for white people, more for white people than for others. And they hid the wheels of policy so well that these people believed that they did it all on their own. And then that leads to more conservative politics where people are like, well, I pulled myself up by my bootstraps. Why can't you?
I mean, it's not just
people
the New
should
Deal.
Check out an interview I did years ago now with, I think it's Susan Mettler, called The Submerged State, where that dynamic that Jamie's talking about, people not being aware of how much government largesse they get, is a problem. And
how about like European immigration, like sort of policies throughout American history, right? Like that's a subsidy toward every white person.
Indeed.
Yeah,
indeed.
And it's tied in with race as well, because Black Americans did not benefit from these home ownership programs in the same way because of redlining.
Absolutely. In fact, it was even more aggressive than that. The redlining was not even by the banks. There were programs instituted by the FHA that said explicitly, covenants, Levittown. Covenants that specifically said can't sell to Black people. But yeah, this is a problem. But I think also, you know, part of it is the way, I don't know how you reach these people other than maybe you talk about things like climate. You talk about lack of opportunities for people and pull on their heartstrings. You're not going to win. Listen, you're not going to win the vast majority of these things. You know, the idea is to mitigate that chasm.
Oh, well, for even middle-class people who are doing very well, lack of coverage for long-term care at the end of their lives could really sap the fortune that they're leaving behind to their kids. So maybe you can personalize it like that.
Yeah, that's true too. Unless you are super, super wealthy, the toughest place to be is being like moderately wealthy or middle class, because then what you need to do is you go into long-term care and you have to spend down $12,000 a month until you have virtually nothing. It depends on state to state as to when you become eligible for Medicaid, but virtually nothing. So unless you bought long-term long-term care insurance, which is enormously expensive, and I may be ineligible at this age to even get it. You need to spend everything down to be. But 2/3 of our elderly who are in nursing homes are there being paid for by Medicaid. So
Medicare.
Medicaid.
Oh.
Medicaid, because you need to spend down. You need to spend down to basically where you're living, where your income is sub-poverty levels. And all your assets add up to about, again, it depends on state to state, to about $2,000. And then you're eligible for Medicaid in these nursing homes. Medicare does not cover nursing homes.
That's crazy.
It's nuts.
I feel like one more way to talk to older people about this is to hold grandkids over their heads. Or even if they're not your parents or grandparents, like you can still say, and I'm being honest when I say this, I will be a lot more likely to have children and, keep the human race going if we have a welfare state.
There you go.
And they understand that a lot of the time, I hope. Because right now, like, I don't know how I could do it.
There you go. Leverage the grandkids. Folks, with that said, we're going to head into the fun half where things are going to get a lot funner. Just a reminder, your support makes this show possible. You can become a member by going to jointhemajority.report.com. When you do, you not only get the free half free of commercials, you also get the fun half. And we're starting to put video up for our members. We're going to be doing that more and more as we build out capacity here. All sorts of tiny little bonus stuff. I mean, it's great. Become a member today. Go to jointhemajority.report.com. Also, justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code majority, get 10% off. Sign up for the AM Quickie. The AM Quickie, the number of subscribers has jumped by almost 20% in the past 4 weeks. And it's a great way. You want to catch up on the news from the last week? You want to, like, if you're out of the news for a couple of days, go back and listen to the Quickie. It takes about 5 to maybe now 8 minutes. We're trying to get it back down to 7 or 6, Brandon. But very quick. In fact, you speed it up, it goes quicker. But and if you want to hear me talk quickly, this is the thing to listen to. A lot of people complain about my ahs and my ums, and that I'm too slow, and I'm thinking about things. You're going to enjoy this because I'm reading and I'm going fast. So I can do it. I just don't like to. But check it out, amquickie.com. Also, check out Nomiki Kant's new show. You can go to patreon.com, The Nomiki Show. And Nomiki, I think, is going to be joining us for the debate tomorrow night. We're going to be covering the debate live. We have a show tomorrow, obviously. Michael will be here. TMBS is tonight. So check out the Michael Brooks Show, patreon.com/TMBS. And you can see on YouTube live tonight, youtube.com/The Michael Brooks Show. Jamie, you're back.
Here I am. Oh, yes. This week on the Antifada, or I guess it's last week now because we weren't here last week, I speak with Faye Eckler, the vice president and co-founder of the Socialist Rifle Association, about what the proper socialist take is on gun control, why it's good to have an armed left, and much, much more. Also coming out this week, I have on Heather Fortune, who is the front woman from Wax Idols and is a solo artist now. And we talk about a little bit about music.
Is that a band?
Yeah.
Okay.
They're great. Check them out if you like really good post-punk music that's like sad and dancey at the same time.
Yeah, I do.
All right. Where was I? Oh, yes. We went to New Hampshire together. We talk about our trip. We talk about how capitalism is ruining music and a lot of other stuff. I recorded it a while ago. I'm not sure. Patreon.com/The Antifada.
Matt.
Yeah, folks, check out Literary Hangover, my podcast, where the most recent episode we talk about the history of Colonel Nathaniel Bacon's Rebellion by Ebenezer Cook. It's a poem that's about the rebellion. You should know about Bacon's Rebellion. That's all I'll say for today. Check it out.
All right, fair enough. See you in the fun half.
You are in for it.
All right, folks, 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half. Who sent us this?
Alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you can imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just want to degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it in my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Almost says what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman.
And the alpha males are back.
I am a total cunt.
Can we bring back DJ Danergy's song, please?
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Danergy.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break for people.
That's fucking nonsense.
Hey, folks, reminder. I do not have Parkinson's.
And the alpha males are
psych. Fuck 'em. Almost says what? Almost says what?
Hell of a lot of bank. 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 Hell of a lot of bank.
All lives matter. Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
The alpha males are back. And the Africans are black Africans. The alpha males are back. And the Africans are black.
See Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keeping it 100. Can't knock the hustle.
Come on. Fuck 'em. Things I do for the bigger game plan. By the way, it's my birthday. Happy birthday to me, Jew boy. I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back. Africans are black. Alpha males are back. Africans are black.
Come on. Come on. Someone needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here. I am a total pussy.
Wow. I didn't realize. I thought this just happened. But apparently, they decided to roll it out now.
Pocket.
It's an inspiring story.
It's ace up his sleeve.
It's like Bernie Sanders of 2020.
Guys, should we do it? Is now the time.
It's his ace in the hole.
It's now D-Day. B-Day. Is today B-Day? Is today PB Day, everybody, in the campaign office of Pete Buttigieg? Are we going to drop the real bomb? This is going to be the thing that puts us over. A lot of campaigns sit around, they're waiting. They've got the killer proposal. We're going to eliminate all debt, period. Or something dramatic that's going to help people. No, at the Buttigieg campaign, we're going to drop the story of the time the lights went out. Buttigieg, I thought this video, I saw this video and I thought it happened while he was in Nevada now. Right? Like last week, he was in Nevada. They had an election in Nevada on Saturday.
It's topical because of the geography, not the time.
So on today's Monday, Sunday. So on Saturday, this is what he thought was going to push him over the edge, I guess, because he tweeted this right as the polls closed or something, as they were announcing the things, and apparently the idea was like, we're going to time this with our huge second place surprising finish. Incidentally, I should tell you that he came in third and not viable for delegates. He came in 13.9%. Biden had 20.
Yeah, come on, man.
Yeah. But let's go through the moment that never was, that the Buttigieg campaign was hoping. So he tweets out at about, 8:15 at night, The America we're building is one that calls for leaders to walk in the way of decency and humility. That's a biblical illusion. That's a biblical illusion, I believe. Knowing that the purpose of the presidency is not the glorification of the president. It's the unification and the empowerment of the American people. So he's this is like a little bit of dog whistle to like Christians. This is what he talks, and that's fine. I mean, people do that. And then he goes, this past fall, because he wants you to know this story is not about him. It's about unification and empowerment of the American people. It's not about his own glorification. This past fall, we were campaigning near Reno. And in the middle of my remarks, the power went out completely. I was speaking to a dark room with no microphone, raising my voice to make myself heard. Scroll. It only took a moment, but then something happened. One person held up the glowing screen of their phone, and then another, and then another. Everyone holding up their lit phones together until it lit up the whole room. Yeah, not quite, really. I mean, I don't know if you've ever been to a concert since, they got phones
It can look good.
Instead of lighters.
I've seen it look good before.
And I couldn't see who was who behind each light. Who was young, who was old, who was white, and who was black or Latino or Asian or Native.
But most were white.
Who was on 2 feet and who was in a wheelchair. Yeah. I saw each little light and knew that behind it was an American who saw the lights go out and knew to do something about it. Thank God, I just want to take a moment to say that this did not happen in a European country or in a Latin American country.
We would have tore each other apart.
Where they would have just been like, well, we have no source of light. It's too bad our phones wouldn't light. Hey, wait a second.
Wait, there's an American in here.
There's an American in. Hey, everybody, listen to the American. Guys, your phones have light.
Flashlight mode, guys.
Flashlight mode, guys. But behind it was an American who saw the lights go out and knew to do something about it. All it took was one person, and others began to do the same. Well, I guess I should put my phone too. If we can light up a high school gym, we can light up a neighborhood. We can light up a neighborhood. We can light a city. And if we can light up a city, we can light up our country.
With cell phones?
Well, I mean, it would be better just to have actually a decent grid that was working.
This is his version of the rural electrification program.
If we can light up our country, we can make this nation we love shine once more as a beacon to the world.
Ooh, city on a hill.
City on a hill.
iPhone on a hill.
iPhone on a hill. And there we go. He has crossed the metaphor plane, right? He's crossed the plane of metaphors.
It's quite apt.
Here is quite an app. Here is Pete Buttigieg.
Yeah, they should make an app that can turn everyone's flashlight on at the same time.
Exactly. A Buttigieg or whatever it is. Here it is. That moment that did not take place recently. Apparently it took place a long time ago. They've been waiting to spring this on all of us.
Justices ought to be able to retire like they used to.
It goes up.
Wow.
Listen to the music swell, folks, even though. What? Where did that music come from? Oh, there's people.
Wow, I got goosebumps.
Can you hear me if I'm just loud?
Wait, nothing from the actual speech?
Thank you. The speech wasn't so great.
What can I say? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Wow.
Really helps if there's giant light windows in the
Yeah,
top
the
of the
huge
chute.
windows he didn't mention, really. It wasn't completely dark. It was, I mean, look, folks, this is what happens when the lights go out. I have been in some instances. I've had some experience with lights going out, like we saw in that video. And I can tell you, in that experience, what?
Whoa.
Whoa. That's weird. Wow. Is everybody okay?
What's happening?
Holy crap. Matt, that's a brilliant idea. Are you an American by chance? Oh. Folks, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
America. Let me just say this. If these computers that are providing light on me, which we didn't realize, we didn't test out the bit beforehand, but if these computers can shine light on me, then perhaps these computers and your phone lights can shine light on the entire studio. And if we can shine a light on the studio, then perhaps we can shine a light on the entire building. And if we can do that for an entire building, there's no reason why we can't do that for a section of Brooklyn. And if we can do it for a section of Brooklyn, we can do it for the state of New York. And if we can do it for the state of New York, perhaps we can do it for the entire country. And if we can do it for the country, then we can do it for the world. And if we can do that, and also power music, then maybe we can find a way to fight climate change because we figured out how to light things up without electricity. Just batteries. And that will last for at least 90 minutes, maybe an hour and 20 minutes. But for those hour and 20 minutes, ladies and gentlemen, we can come together as one. We can be one. And with that, what is that music? That is not inspirational music.
I'm inspired.
Wait, this is where you start cheering for me.
Yeah.
No, Sam. You folks are great.
Sam.
Thank you. Okay, lights back up. There we
Thank
go.
God the power's back.
Yeah, whoa. Oh, that was...
It's much better with the power.
Now, folks, do us a favor. We're not going to talk about this for 6 months. And in an opportune moment, when we're doing a pledge drive or something, we're going to break out that moment so that it's really impressive to people.
He did help to light up Afghanistan.
He did. He certainly did. Without any lights, without any electricity. Did a great job with that. This thing is, now, he is apparently... Pete has told this story about the lights going out in Reno, which took place months ago, which, it's not that dramatic. I don't know if I've ever told this story. When I filled in for Keith Olbermann on Current, if you go back and you look at the suit that he had against Current, he referenced the fact that their studio sucked and that the lights would go out. And I think he referenced the time that I was actually hosting for him. And the lights went out. They just went out for like 4 seconds. And all I could see was the teleprompter. But of course, I thought I was having some type of episode. And I was getting tunnel vision because all of a sudden, all I could see was the teleprompter because everything went completely pitch black. They don't let in natural light because they want to control the light. So there's no windows. When it goes black in a studio, it goes blackout, except for the teleprompter, which is white on black. And I honestly thought for a moment, like, oh my God, I'm having some type of episode now. Like something transcendental is happening to me.
As you're broadcasting?
As in the middle of the broadcast.
Wow.
And
are you okay?
Maybe that's what's happening to Chris Matthews.
And I don't know. I mean, I was just like, what just happened? And at the break, I was like, guys, I'm not sure I can finish. I said, like, I felt like everything went black. And they go, oh no, it did. Sorry about that. So, but apparently this has been such a dramatic, they perceive this as such a metaphor. And even on their metaphor, they like, if we can light this up, we can unify.
How do you charge your phone?
No. Like, you actually have to go to the point where it's like, thank God there were Americans there to come up with the idea of using their cell phone. Like the flashlight feature is actually like literally on the top page. It's like right next to alarm clock.
On Android, it's a swipe down.
Right. Same on this. It's like, oh God, thank God we had Americans there to realize that we could use a stopwatch to tell time or something. Here is Pete retelling the story, and the saddest part comes after this.
It just took one person.
He's telling about how one person
started it, and then a bunch of others began to do the same. And if
with
we
the
can
cell
light
phone.
up a high school gym like that, then we can light up a neighborhood. And if we can light up a neighborhood, then we can light up a city. And if we can light up a city, we can light up this whole country.
Yeah, that doesn't follow.
And if we light up this country, then everyone can make sure this country we love shines as a beacon around the world once more.
Yeah, this guy liked it. Yeah, I know. Hold on. I wonder why that guy liked it. I know that guy's going like, hey, that was Obama's speech.
I've heard this one before.
Oh, yeah, you did. Did you? Huh? Okay. Let's hear it. This is Barack Obama running in 2008.
Started. It shows you what one voice can do. One voice can change a room. And if a voice can change a room, it can change a city. And if it can change a city, it can change a state. And if it can change a state, it can change a nation. And if it can change a nation, it can change the world. Virginia, your voice can change the world tomorrow.
Now, it had more resonance when Obama said it because he was actually talking about if you come out and vote, that vote can actually have a difference that will cascade. And actually, you could, that's not just metaphorical. Like, you can actually draw the line, right? Like, I mean, if 500 people had voted for Gore as opposed to Bush in Florida in 2000, say, the whole trajectory of the next 20 years could have been fairly fundamentally different. And, but Buttigieg goes from, if one person can pull out their cell phone and light up a room, then a bunch of people can. Then we can become a light. Then he jumps to a metaphor where we can light up a city and then we can light up a country. And then we can bring people together.
With phones.
If I was there, I would have been preserving my battery. I'll just say that.
I can't remember who said it, that Buttigieg was like an Obama cover band.
Yeah, bad one.
I mean,
though.
I said that he's like Patrick Bateman doing an Obama impression.
Yes, there you go. Patrick Bateman? Jason Bateman.
American Psycho.
Oh,
Patrick
no, I don't know
Bateman.
that guy. I never saw that.
Not good. Very bad guy.
Was it?
It's a very good movie.
Good movie.
Good movie?
Good book. Bad
I
guy.
know, Psycho.
Psycho.
So there it is, Pete Buttigieg.
You think he's also trying to do like a not me, us thing a little bit? Like the fact that there's people who like him means that he's also part of a grassroots movement.
Yeah, no, of course. I think they're always trying to make it a movement that's bigger, but he's trying to be poetic, and he doesn't have that in him.
To compare him and like that, the disparity between their skills as rhetoricians between Buttigieg, Obama, and that so many people think they can just do the Obama thing it's very cringeworthy.
I mean, I don't even really need to like someone that much to shine a light on them with my phone.
It's true.
I just did it for all you guys.
It's also like, it's one thing to go out and, make your voice heard in public or to go vote. Like holding up your phone in a dark room is probably like almost the least thing you could do. In fact, it's almost like it's self-survival too. Like, how am I going to get out of here? I'm going to need my phone. Like who here, if we were stuck in a dark room with our phone, the first thing we would all do would be to reach for our phone.
I guess I'll just tolerate this darkness.
Only Americans would be bold enough to say, I'm not going to walk around in here in the dark. I'm going to use the flashlight in my pocket.
The Americans noticed the lights went out.
But all right, enough of that. Enough of that. Eye on the prize, ladies and gentlemen. Let's take this in chronology, shall we? Let's go to the debate. We got a couple of clips that were resonate. We really should have pulled. Do we pull a Warren clip? Let's get the because Warren really did go at Bloomberg hard. Now, Bernie didn't. I mean, Bernie did, and to a certain extent, they all did. Bernie, I think, went at him second hardest. And I think the idea was that, like, Bernie is the front runner and wanted to act like a front runner. Warren was in Hail Mary mode, and the advantage she had in that mode, as opposed to anybody else up there, is that this was a very natural thing for her to do. I mean, how many times have we played clips over the years of her lighting up a bank executive coming in front of the one of her committees? And this was that. This was her going at Michael Bloomberg. Do we have a clip? Let's play it. Do we have it? Let's play this one right here. Oh, all right. Well, let's play this other clip of, this is Michael Bloomberg first saying he earned his billions through hard work.
Mayor Bloomberg, should you exist?
I can't speak for all billionaires. All I know is I've been very lucky, made a lot of money, and I'm giving it all away to make this country better. And a good chunk of it goes to the Democratic Party as well.
Is it too much? Have you earned too much money? Has it been an obscene amount of... Should you have earned that much money?
Yes. I worked very hard for it, and I'm giving it away.
All right. Thank you.
I've worked very hard for it, and I'm actually going to get tax deductions on this. Do we have that clip of what $1 billion is? Let's play this, because this is something that I don't think people really fully understand. And somebody tweeted out this really great video where a guy tried to show, I guess it's a TikTok. It was tweeted out by Beezer Cool and Nice.
And it's Humphrey Talks on TikTok.
Humphrey Talks on TikTok. And this is the short version. And here, this is self-explanatory.
The scale of $1 billion is really crazy. So let's say 1 grain of rice is equivalent to 100K, and 10 grains of rice would be then 1 million. Well, how much is $1 billion? So my Saturday night consisted of counting 10,000 grains of rice, one by one, just to show you guys how much $1 billion is. Of course I filmed it, and of course I time-lapsed it, and this is playing at, I don't even know, God knows how fast it's playing at, but... So now I'm proud to present to you the results. That is $1 billion, where each grain of rice is worth 100K. Look how much rice this is, guys. That's crazy. I just bought you like a Lamborghini right here, and I didn't even notice it was gone. Here's a $5 million house in California, and oh look, I still have all this money. If you guys like that content, please follow me. I drop a video on personal finance every day. Thanks.
Okay. Now go back just so that people can look at that disparity between 100,000 and there's $1 billion, and then look at the $5 million house.
I'm proud to present to you the results.
All right, there's $1 million and there's $1 billion.
That is $1 billion.
All right, go back again. Million, billion. Now, Michael Bloomberg has 65 of those things on the right. Bernie Sanders has 2 of those things on the left. 65! 65! 65!
Bloated just thinking about that much rice.
I mean, that's such an enormous amount of money.
And wealth.
It would be an enormous amount of rice at 100,000 a grain. But it's such an enormous amount of money. The guy is not, if he gave away 64 billion of it, there's no way he could possibly notice.
Well, he said he gives it all away.
Well, he doesn't.
It's funny how hurried he is to say, I'm giving it away, though.
But even if he
takes a while to give away that much money.
Here's the thing. Even if he does give it all away, the problem is that he, as one person, giving away that much money influences society in a way that is unhealthy. It's completely out of balance. I mean, I use the example ad nauseum of Bill Gates spending just less than $1 billion on an experiment that fundamentally altered the way that we perceive education in this country for almost 2 decades. And at the end of that 2 decades, a Rand report that they commissioned said, oops, our bad. We were completely mistaken in our theory. We should go back to what the educators were saying in the first place. Think of the generations of teachers that were lost because of that, because that will echo through the years and has echoed in the past. And you have one person who's able to do that 64 times. Even if he gave away 64 of his $65 billion, the implications of what that would do. And one person's not supposed to have that much power in this country. I don't care if it's a question of them being king or just being named that. That's what an oligarch is. That's what an oligarch is. Even, not just with government, but their sheer ability to change the trajectory of sectors of our society because they have so much purchasing power. And that could be, even if he didn't want to influence government whatsoever, which they all do. When they get that much money, it's like, why wouldn't they? Like, they're sitting on Atlas, I mean, they're just sitting from Mount Vesuvius or whatever it's called.
Vesuvius.
Well,
thank you. And they're just going like, oh, you know what? I mean, they need me.
Well, it was only a matter of time before one of them would want to cut out the middleman and just rule over us himself.
Yes. And people have made the point that if Bloomberg wins, if Bloomberg gets the nomination, I got news for you. The days of having a non-billionaire be the nominee, I think that's over. Because they all now have a game plan.
He's definitely the accelerationist option.
Yes, I would imagine, but let's go back to the debate. This is what is this clip? Okay, and this is Bernie talking, responding to Michael Bloomberg's claim about, I'm a billionaire, I'm giving away all my money.
Just to be.
It is your policy.
Thank you. It is my policy, and I'm very proud of that policy. All right? What we need to do to deal with this grotesque level of income and wealth inequality is make sure that those people who are working, you know what, Mr. Bloomberg, wasn't you who made all that money. Maybe your workers played some role in that as well. And it is important that those workers are able to share the benefits. Also, when we have so many people who go to work every day and they feel not good about their jobs, they feel like cogs in a machine. I want workers to be able to sit on corporate boards as well so they can have some say over what happens to their lives.
Michael Bloomberg did not appreciate the fact that his workers did anything like that.
I thought Bloomberg was assembling all the terminals in his garage.
Creating all that value.
Wow. Bernie's good, man. He, next thing you know, he's going to explain the labor theory of value in a way that makes sense to everyone.
Bloomberg didn't appreciate it.
Basically did.
Yep. And
well, we know how he feels about his employees because we've seen the sexual harassment suits.
Here is Elizabeth Warren taking the biggest piece out of Michael Bloomberg. And she was well situated to do this. And frankly, this is what she should have done with Biden, I think, in the first 2 things. And I know all the theories that, well, Kamala Harris did not, Kamala Harris did not survive. Because it wasn't because she attacked Biden. It was because she didn't have any substance beyond that one comment. It was she should have come out after that with a plan to, desegregate our schools across the country. She should have had a second act to that, and she didn't, and that was the problem.
Bernie attacked Biden on Social Security, and that worked well up for him.
Indeed, because Bernie had a foundation about supporting the expansion of Social Security. And Warren came out of this attack on Bloomberg quite well, because it was not for a moment was there anybody who doubted where she was coming from or her bona fides to talk this way.
I'd like to talk about who we're running against. A billionaire who calls women fat broads and horse-faced lesbians. And no, I'm not talking about Donald Trump. I'm talking about Mayor Bloomberg. Democrats are not going to win if we have a nominee who has a history of hiding his tax returns, of harassing women, and of supporting racist policies like redlining and stop and frisk. Look, I'll support whoever the Democratic nominee is, but understand this. Democrats take a huge risk if we just substitute one arrogant billionaire for another. This country has worked for the rich for a long time and left everyone else in the dirt. It is time to have a president who will be on the side of working families and be willing to get out there and fight for them. That is why I am in this race, and that is how I will beat Donald Trump.
Bloomberg looks like he literally just ate a shirt. And it decimated his candidacy.
He's not used to people being allowed to talk to him like that.
I don't not only that, I don't even think I don't think that this guy has had a situation where anyone who wasn't doing something illicit, right? I'm sure he's dealt with protesters or stuff like that, but that to him is oh, who let this fly in the house type of situation. I don't think, when you've got $65 billion, I don't think you come in contact with people who don't just tell you everything that you want to know.
Did you remember one other thing that stuck out for me from the debates is the way Bloomberg said a couple times, "Let me finish," in a very not used to be talked over kind of method?
Yeah, listen to this.
I think at that time I wrote an article praising Obamacare. It was either in the New York Post or the Daily News. So the facts are I was there. Let me finish. Thank you. I was in favor of it. I thought it didn't go as far as we should.
Now, Joe Biden 15, 20 years ago would go I'll let you finish, but it doesn't make what you're saying any more true. Something like that. Instead, Biden just sits there and takes it. Warren at 1.2 destroyed him on the NDAs, on the non-disclosure forms. That is, and that is where her legal background really kicked in, because she understands this dynamic probably more than Bloomberg does. Bloomberg's just trying to BS it. Here is Elizabeth Warren really destroying Bloomberg on the issue of the non-disclosure forms. And Bloomberg said, subsequent to this, after about a week or two, they had to let them, rescind. Now, the process is such that clearly what they did that set up was contact the company, put in a request to be released. Then we will absorb that request, and then we will release you if you go further. I can tell you what's happening right now in that process. How much money more do you want? Yes. Do you want 1 million? Do you want 2 million? How many grains of rice am I going to have to give you from my massive pile of rice? Do you want 4? Do you want 6? 6 pieces of rice? Because guess what?
Getting's good now.
The amount of money that he's going to have to spend to keep those women from talking is literally the functional equivalent of me having to get a new printer. And I'm not talking the ink that comes with it. I'm just saying the printer, because that's the way they get you. The printer costs like $45, and then the ink costs like $75.
I feel like we're always underestimating too when we make these analogies.
I
It's
think you're right.
probably more like buying a pack of Twinkies.
I think you're probably right about that. Here is Warren going in on Bloomberg on the NDAs.
Senator Warren, you've been critical of Mayor Bloomberg on this issue.
Yes, I have, and I hope you heard what his defense was. I've been nice to some women.
Look at this eye roll. Oh my God. Such a baby.
The mayor has to stand on his record, and what we need to know is exactly what's lurking out there. He has gotten some number of women, dozens, who knows, to sign non-disclosure agreements, both for sexual harassment and for gender discrimination in the workplace. So, Mr. Mayor, are you willing to release all of those women from those non-disclosure agreements so we can hear their side of the story?
We have a very few non-disclosure agreements.
How many is
Let me
that?
finish.
How many is that?
None of them accuse me of doing anything other than maybe they didn't like the joke I told. And let me put, there's agreements between two parties that wanted to keep it quiet, and that's up to them. They signed those agreements, and we'll live with it.
So wait, when you say this, I just want to be clear. Some is how many? And when you say they signed them and they wanted them, if they wish now to speak out and tell their side of the story about what it is they allege, that's now okay with you? You're releasing them on television tonight?
Senator? No.
Is that right?
Senator? Senator, the company and somebody else, in this case, a man or a woman, or could be more than that, they decided when they made an agreement that they wanted to keep it quiet for everybody's interest. They signed the agreements, and that's what we're going to do.
I'm sorry. No, the question is, are the women bound by being muzzled by you? And you could release them from that immediately, because understand, this is not just a question of the mayor's character. This is also a question about electability. We are not going to beat Donald Trump with a man who has who knows how many non-disclosure agreements and the drip, drip, drip of stories of women saying they have been harassed and discriminated against. That's not what we do as Democrats.
I honestly, like, that's like almost like museum grade. And like throughout that, like what she did, like, you know, at one point he goes like, I heard the question. She could have stopped and been like, oh, you did? Like, she did not. She went like a laser and just cut through this guy like butter. And she did it. She threw away the part on some level of like, this is not just about, you know, the moral question. You know, like so much is left unsaid when you say that. That the audience, in this case, you start going down the road of what's behind that, the morality question. And she is already on to the practicality question of like, here's the thing, you guys go work out the morality. I'm not going to walk you through this. Here's 2 + 2. You guys figure out what 4 is. But I'm also going to remind you that in terms of just a practical question, this guy may have billions of dollars to run, but it's not going to make a difference if you're just putting up one serial harasser against another.
The point is to beat Trump. It's not Michael Bloomberg.
And like Democrats actually care about that stuff, at least some. So, you know, Trump's base doesn't care, but the people you're trying to turn out to vote against Trump,
indeed,
at least some of them care.
Definitely everybody who considers himself in any degree a Democrat wants to beat Trump. So like I mean, Bloomberg can't beat Trump either. So it's a wise thing to bring up.
The whole thing was just well done. Since we're on talking about Bloomberg, Ben Dixon and Matt Binder have been machines. Go over, subscribe to their podcast, follow them on Twitter. Benjamin Dixon, Matt Binder, Old Matt, as we call him around here. Ben, you can is on the show on Fridays. They were just machines over the past week in turning out clips of Michael Bloomberg to expose who this guy is. And why is this important? As I was saying before the break, Michael Bloomberg has been basically a commodity. He has commodified himself. He has turned himself into a bar of soap or shampoo or toothpaste. And in many instances, there's no other competing toothpaste or soap. He has so much money. He has inundated the airwaves in places that no one can afford to even run ads. Basically saying, like, I'm the best soap. Incidentally, there's no other soaps advertising. I will get you squeaky clean. And after a while, like, that soap seems pretty good because there's no one there to say, like, oh, this soap, it's manufactured in China and they don't have the same regulations and it's tainted with lead. Or, oh, incidentally, this soap is allergenic. Not hypoallergenic, just allergenic. And
P.S., this soap has not been endorsed by Obama.
Right, indeed. Exactly. This soap has not been endorsed by Obama. He doesn't use this soap. It was just a picture of him using a soap. People pee in this soap. Nobody's there to tell anybody that. It's just soap gets free reign. What Ben Dixon and Matt Binder, and obviously others, have done is basically put into, in earned media, they put into the mainstream. And every time you retweet one of these guys, you're doing it too. They've put into the mainstream the counter narrative that, like, hey, the soap is tainted. Here is Michael Bloomberg. Again, use the patented cedar frame. Assume for a moment as you close your eyes that Michael Bloomberg believes he is literally a deity. Not like the God, not like Yahweh, but more like a Greek god who sometimes commingles with humans. Maybe he takes a human mate for a while and has some spawn that are half gods. But then everything he says and the way that he talks about these things makes a lot more sense. Listen to him. When was this back? This was this is after the sequester. Now, just to give you some I'll tell you the sequester in a moment. Listen to this.
Now let's talk about intelligent cuts rather than the sequestering thing, which would devastate defense. There is a ways to slowly decrease the benefits or raise the eligibility age for Medicare and for Social Security. There's a ways to have more copay on Medicaid, which will do two things. One, the users of the service will pay a little more, but two, they'll think twice before they use services. So the services they use will be those that are really needed and not stuff that would be nice to have. Now let's talk.
Okay. This is so appalling on so many ways. I mean, this was very much the Republican line. Now, the sequester happened, if I remember correctly, probably around 2010, 2011. And what it was Obama's attempt to bring Republicans to the table by saying, we're going to cut everything in the budget. And this was his turn to austerity, which was a huge mistake following the stimulus. We're going to cut everything in the government budget by a blanket. I think it was, I can't remember, maybe 12% or something like that. Somebody can look it up. It doesn't matter. Everything is going to be cut. All discretionary spending, which means that Social Security and Medicare were not. We're going to cut all of it. And the idea was that the Republicans would be so against cutting defense that they could save all the other discretionary spending, like EPA, the USDA, food stamps, whatever it is. CDC, the National Health, NIH. The NIH got devastated, all those cuts. And you heard Bloomberg say, the sequester's stupid. And people agreed that it was stupid. You don't just cut across the board. You actually assess like what your needs are. But he said it was stupid because it cut defense. Then he went on to say, we can decrease benefits or raise the eligibility age for Medicare and Social Security. Again, remember, life expectancy has risen since the era of Social Security being implemented by about 10 years, only for the top 50th percentile in income. If you work a job that involves any type of physical work, your life expectancy relative to like 100 years ago, 80 years ago, is maybe up, like you can count it in months as opposed to years. Maybe a year and a half.
What would Walter Block say about that?
Well, tough cookums for you.
Take a month or no month?
Yeah, choose it, whatever. At least you had a job. The idea that if he raises the copays for Medicare or Medicaid, you won't get all these people who are doing stuff that's nice to have when it comes to medicine. It's nice to have. I'm like, what are those things that it's nice to have from your doctor?
Insulin.
Honestly, this whole concept of we need to make patients better consumers is ridiculous. Used to be you would walk into a stereo store back in the day, and the stereo salespeople were famous for like upselling you stuff that you didn't need because you're not a stereo expert. Everybody listens to music. Everybody has a speaker or a radio. But you walk into the stereo store, and within 15 minutes, this guy from, Tweeter, I think it was called, was going to upsell you, and you were going to walk out of there with a huge stereo system you didn't need. But now, we are all expected, and it's that much harder if you are someone who is relying on Medicaid or if you're relying on Medicare, because statistically speaking, that means you are working longer hours, you are working harder. You may not have the same educational background, you're older, but frankly, if you put me in there, doesn't matter. The idea that we can be more educated as a consumer as to what healthcare we need, as opposed to relying on our doctors to tell us what we need, is absurd. The idea that I'm going to choose between a colonoscopy or maybe some type of blood test that is like 25% efficient at telling me whether I have colon cancer versus a colonoscopy, which is, 90% or 80, I'm making up the numbers because I have no idea.
I'm going to get so many colonoscopies when we get Medicare for all.
But the idea, well, now they're free because of Obamacare. But the idea that I would make that choice based on money and makes me a smarter medical consumer is wacko. It's insanity. And this guy is out there saying it as if it's like, his sugary drinks thing.
I mean, if anything, if we really want to avoid upselling, we should remove the profit motive from the healthcare industry.
The only way we're going to do that is to, at the very least, curb it. And that's part of the reason why single payer works, is because you start to see across the board what is an efficient thing to do in any moment based upon the data across 300 million people and what is an inefficient thing to do. And then Medicare for All says to the provider, we're going to cap what you can charge on that. And we're not going to reimburse you for doing something that is ridiculous. That is a supply side problem. That is not a demand side problem, because there's never going to be a time in the history of mankind where patients are going to know as much as their doctors unless they are doctors.
Well, that is what neoliberalism is, really. Among other things, it's individualizing every problem and shifting the responsibility onto the individual citizen for social problems, rather than taking a collective responsibility as a society.
And it's basically saying the way that we cut costs on what we spend as a country for medicine is just make sure that it's expensive enough that people don't err on the side of their health and err on the side of basically being able to pay their electric bill.
Be nice to get this rash checked out, but it's kind of a luxury. I'll wait till next
Right.
year.
And, I just remember a story that I'm sure has happened dozens of times since, but that I remember reading a story on air 10 years ago, 12 years ago. Kid had a tooth infection. Parents could not afford to take him to the dentist. Killed him. That was maybe, if cost is there, that was probably the rational.
Has there ever been a study on if we have rising rates of suicide, does debt have? Does anybody study the effect of debt on those?
On suicide?
Yeah.
I don't know. I would be surprised if somebody hasn't. But
Yeah, we've seen correlations certainly with economic crisis, the opiate epidemic, things of that, deaths of despair are way up.
Yeah.
Things of that nature.
Bloomberg is just a nasty human being. And I know that's an insult to call him a human being to him, because he does believe that he lives above us.
He's like Trump if he were never cool and funny.
Yeah, I think of him and people call him and Trump both authoritarians. I think the way I would divvy this up is he's more of an authoritarian, Trump's more of a fascist in that. Trump's more he's more comfortable at a rally surrounded by his democratic energy surrounding him. I don't think Bloomberg just wants to discipline everybody.
Trump is a coward.
Yeah.
He's a Straussian.
Trump is a coward. Bloomberg would not be afraid to send in troops to put down a strike.
Let's turn to some commentary that we may have missed over the week. As people were piling on Bloomberg, the dudes from Pod Save America weighed in. Their podcast is huge. Their podcast is huge, and despite that, it's sort of stunning. Despite the fact that how huge their podcast is, they still manage to be in a bubble. And we're not taking phone calls today, but that's a lot of the reason why we take phone calls and take IMs. And this is one of those rare days we're not, is because I like to hear from people. Keeps us on some level from being in a bubble. Now, I don't live in LA, and all my friends are not either show business people or political operatives. So I'm not too much in that type of bubble. But nevertheless, I don't like to talk to people outside of this job. And so that gets me a little bubble-fied. This is the greatest example of a bubble. I want you to think what he's saying, the dynamic makes some sense if you were talking to a child. It's a very low-hanging fruit. But when you start to tear it apart, who are they talking about? Who is taking this message? Who are these people that are confused by this? It starts to fall apart. Here it is.
Look, I think the other thing that's tough here is there's a lot of folks on the left who spent a lot of this campaign telling us that Pete Buttigieg is some centrist shill and not a good enough Democrat, and Joe Biden is not a good enough Democrat, and Amy Klobuchar is not a good enough Democrat. And it's now we have someone in Mike Bloomberg who really isn't a good enough Democrat, who really is a moderate Republican. And because a lot of times they spent this entire campaign telling us that good mainstream Democrats like Pete Buttigieg and Amy Klobuchar and Joe Biden aren't good enough for us, it's going to be harder for a lot of people to believe that that's true about Mike Bloomberg when it is true about Mike Bloomberg.
This is the fable we will tell our children. A boy who cried centrist.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, except for not. Who is it that he is talking about?
Who's saying that Bloomberg is a centrist? He's a Republican.
No. But I want to stay on the point I'm telling. Who is he talking to? Is he saying that his audience, who presumably the left has been telling his audience that Buttigieg, I'm just trying to map this out. He's saying the left has been telling his audience, presumably, that Buttigieg is no good, that Biden's no good, that Klobuchar is no good. And now his audience is not going to listen to the left, or presumably him, right? When he says, or the left says, Bloomberg is really bad too. In fact, Bloomberg's worse. So
he was really going to listen in the first place.
Well, but that's my point. It's like either his audience trusts him and he can tell them, or his audience is listening to the left and they will accept the fact that, like, okay, they're all not that good and Bloomberg's just worse. Like, who are they talking about? What audience are they referring to that has been reading this book about who are the townspeople in their scenario, right? The boy comes down, says wolf. The boy comes down, says centrist, centrist, centrist. And then when the real centrist shows up, who I guess in their mind wants to cut Medicaid, wants to cut Medicare, thinks that it's like, he's talking like Paul Ryan in that clip. He endorsed George Bush. He spied on Muslims. He imposed and grew and protected a racist policy that criminalized essentially every black kid age 15 to 24, black man, black kid in the city. He denied the Central Park Five any type of compensation for being locked up for no reason. He's worse. He's worse than them. They can still be bad, but when the sheep, boy comes down and says like, centrist, who are the townspeople in his scenario? Is it his audience that's too dumb to understand this because he's heard it from the left? Like, that's the thing I don't get. They tell these stories that are very clever and also, sorry, moron, but 2 days later after you said that in Nevada, the one opportunity that people get to actually say this stuff to Bloomberg, about Bloomberg in a national audience, the first time that anybody's been able to confront this guy nationally, he drops like a stone. So, A, we don't know who the townspeople are in your scenario. It's so silly. B, the scenario is completely wrong. How do you get to be the top podcast in the country?
Be able to put Barack Obama's administration on your resume.
Son of a bitch. I knew it. I mean,
that's all this and the whole, like, in my opinion, like a lot of the online media professionals complain about Bernie bros. It's just they're tired of being ratioed.
Right.
And then you need to create a political philosophy out of that.
Got to shape up. I've heard from people who used to listen to Pod Save America and now they listen to this show. So that's nice.
That's good.
They're graduating.
I don't know. What we need to do is have a debate. We need to somehow get into their algorithm.
Actually, yeah,
so it's harder to do with podcasts than it is with YouTube shows.
Yeah. To get into their algorithm. Well, but they're on YouTube.
Are they on YouTube?
Don't they post all that stuff on YouTube? I think Crooked Media has a YouTube channel.
I think they have a YouTube channel. I don't think it's their main.
But either way, I think, folks, if you want to see a debate between Majority and the PodSave folks.
Ooh, yeah.
I don't know what it would be on. I don't watch them enough to know what they... But I'll debate them on
I'm sure there's plenty.
On the boy who cried centrist.
Yeah, that sounds perfect.
How many of them are there?
Not only... they seem to... 117.
We can take on all the Johns at once. We're not afraid.
Do they post all their shows? All right, so folks, you got to get over there.
Get on that channel, folks.
Get on that channel. Let's start telling them if they want some.
Be diplomatic about the debate.
There should be a lot of stuff like, if you guys like PodSave, you should see the Majority Report.
Yeah. Not harassment, targeted astroturf.
We're doing what Bloomberg did. Except we're not paying people.
It's voluntary Bloombergism.
Yes, exactly. This guy's having a rough week. Jason, is it Jason Johnson? Is that his name? This guy's having a really rough week. This is the guy who went on MSNBC and got mad at Nina Turner because he was arguing that Michael Bloomberg was not, and this is important to remember. We're going to do that tomorrow. Okay, we'll do that part tomorrow. This is the clip that he's talking about, which, yeah. So this is the guy who, and we're gonna go over this clip, the other clip tomorrow. He went on a Sirius XM show. What show was it? I can't remember her name. So rare stuff gets out on from Sirius XM because they're behind a paywall, and you don't get to. I don't have it myself. What I can't remember. Karen Hunter, right? Okay, Karen Hunter show. And so Jason Johnson went on there. We're going to play the clip tomorrow of him talking about the oligarch thing. But he has taken such, I want to say abuse, but I think that's too strong of a word. People have pushed back on this guy so badly because he's been talking gibberish. It's fine to say, like, if you want to say that, like, I don't know how you can refute the idea that Michael Bloomberg's an oligarch. I mean, yes, I suppose if you want to say, like, from technical speaking, that's supposed to be only something that it's a Russian word and it's only supposed to happen in Russia.
It's not a Russian word, though.
But it's not
back to ancient Greece.
Okay, well, but it's an ancient Greek word. It's not an English word. So, therefore, I mean, the dynamic is quite simple. When somebody has so much money that I happen to think it can include someone just like spending $1 billion on education and changing the political landscape and the federal policy on education just because they've spent money in there. But it's probably also, in a more technical sense, actually trying to influence politics and having so much money that they have a way outsized influence. That you've gone from a plutonomy, where you have an elite group of people who have all the money, to a plutocracy where that money also changes the dynamic that we have in terms of governance. An oligarch is a more pedestrian way of saying plutonomy. Doesn't sound as like futuristic.
I mean, it literally means rule by the few. So maybe there's a number that Jason is just waiting for us to hit, at which point then we can be designated an oligarchy.
Right, where it's just narrow enough. There's too many billionaires. That's the problem. But we will get to that part of it tomorrow. This clip is one where he is showing his anger and also being like contradicting himself within 10 seconds. He's mad at the Bernie supporters for being disdainful if you don't subscribe to their ideology and their perspective on what he says is the deity Bernie Sanders. And then 3 seconds later, he basically says that women of color who support Sanders aren't part of the team.
Stuff like that. The man cares nothing for intersectionality. And I don't care how many people from the island of misfit black girls that you throw out to defend you on a regular basis.
Oh, wait, pause it. Wait, we got to go back. We just jumped in the last 10 seconds. Get the earlier clip.
It's Samuel Finkelstein pulled it. It's
going after our girls.
Don't use that dude's thing. Use the longer clips always. Yeah, okay.
I do find it fascinating that
you get two audios. Hold on 1 second.
I do find it fascinating that racist liberal whites seem to love them some Bernie Sanders consistently and always have a problem with any person of color who doesn't want to follow with the orthodoxy of their Lord and Savior Bernie Sanders. The man cares nothing for intersectionality. And I don't care how many people from the island of misfit black girls that you throw out to defend you on a regular basis. Okay. It doesn't mean that your campaign is serious.
All right, they have a problem with that. But I mean, it's sort of stunning that he says they have a problem with people of color who don't follow their orthodoxy. And then says that if you're a woman of color and you're supporting Bernie Sanders, you're from the island of misfit colored women.
And then the other clip we'll play about the oligarchs, he's like, I've talked to Nina about whether her support for Bernie Sanders makes sense.
I mean, look, he can make that argument. It's just like at the same time when you're saying that the problem is like, oh, if you step out of line, you're in trouble. And he's basically saying that they're misfits for supporting Sanders. we'll do the other clip tomorrow so that we can actually have some context for it. But that I found that stunning.
A lot of misfits in Nevada.
Apparently there was. Here is, let's go to some more of the freak out. Chris Matthews. Now, you have to see this in context, right? Chris Matthews, a week ago, talked about Bernie Sanders in the context of his fear during the, in a Red Dawn scenario, if the Reds had taken over America, back in the day, he would have been shot in Central Park. And then
Probably glad I wasn't here that day.
Oh, this was happening in New Hampshire.
I might have said something untoward.
Right. We don't want anything to befall him, not at the hands of any type of violence. And then he went on to question, which I thought was also like even creepier. Bernie says Denmark. And, how do we know he's talking about Denmark? And Hayes said, well, he's clearly talking about Denmark. He has a 30-year record of basically comparing us to Denmark. And he goes, oh, yeah? How do you know? Has he told you this personally? As if Sanders was like some type of like Manchurian candidate. Bringing the fear to like sort of the fore. Now, Chris Matthews, to the best of my knowledge, was not some guy who was, escaped the Soviet Union in the 70s or 80s. Like, when people tell me like, oh, he's Russian. And so he hears the word socialist, he freaks out. He doesn't want, like that, I can understand. Because they don't understand, like even Juan Guaido, of all people, laughed at the notion that AOC was a socialist. Like socialism so far to the left of where we're talking about in the context of American politics. So it's within that context that you get these responses from Chris Matthews, where he is talking about, and this is the thing, people have defended him on this, but here we go. Listen to this.
I'm reading last night about the fall of France in the summer of 1940, and the general, Reno, calls up Churchill and says, it's over. And Churchill said, how can it be? You got the greatest army in Europe. How can it be over? He said, it's over. So I had that suppressed feeling. I can't be as wild as Carville, but he is damn smart, and I think he's damn right on this one.
What is the suppressed feeling? This is the thing which people are saying it's just a military analogy, and I get that. But what is the suppressed feeling? The suppressed feeling is because both those people were allied, right? Churchill and the French general. I can't remember his name now. De Gaulle, was it De Gaulle who was on the phone with them?
That's what.
Is that what he just said?
He said, yeah.
Oh, okay. Those are the allies, and they're defeated in the face of invaders. The feeling that Matthews had was that we've been defeated. Now, that to me in and of itself is also sort of like inappropriate.
Well, he's taking the mask off.
It's honest, yeah.
Yes, it is honest. Now, it's also inappropriate when you're talking about like, there was a pretty horrific implications to that defeat. And the implications were not all, but most dire in many respects for family members of the guy that you're analogizing about.
Like his literal family was killed by the Nazis.
Like maybe as Chris Matthews and you're a broadcaster, you should sort of contemplate like, hey, wait a second, maybe I can find another. I mean, even like one that's more ambiguous, like, I don't know, Custer or, whatever.
Not to get nitpicky about some of the less important parts of that, but what is supposedly this best army in Europe in this analogy here?
The French?
Well, I mean, let's say we take the
DNC?
French for granted. The DNC is the best army in Europe? I mean, okay, fine. If this really is...
Well, that's what he's saying. Is you had all the resources, and we had all the resources, and we lost. It's over.
I read a lot about Vichy France right after Trump won. To be honest, like that felt appropriate to me. I don't know if I'll revisit it the same way if Bernie wins, but
we'll see.
I will not be surprised if we start seeing some real ass anti-Semitism and racism in general as this race goes on, especially in the general, because it plays into this great replacement narrative that the hard right has.
I think without a doubt we're going to see some of that. Although Barry Weiss, well, we'll do this tomorrow, but Barry Weiss has a bet. I want to do that, and also the Rubin bet. Rubin says 30% black support for Trump. Barry Weiss believes Jews will support Trump over Bernie.
Wow. Rubin's is like, oh man, it's hard to say which is the less dumb of those.
Well, I want both of those printed out, and we're going to put them in our background and maybe full-size posters. That's what they do. I noticed Rubin did this in the run-up to 2018, too. He's like, there's a turning happening. I can feel it. Walk away. Here is Chris Matthews. Now, I think this question, actually, this is where I think, like, I actually appreciate Chris Matthews' perspective on this. Because Chris Matthews, mask off time, had said, like, when Bernie wins, it's like I've been defeated. And now, because of Matthews' perspective, he's really the only one who can bring this up, I think, without getting attacked by the people he's putting on the spot. Because for all the talk about Michael Bloomberg trying to buy his way into the second, or to winning the second round of the convention, or buying his way to someone else besides Bernie winning the second round of the convention, I don't think that's likely at all. If Bernie Sanders has like an 8 or a 10-point lead, I think maybe even a 6-point lead, although then it starts to get a little bit hazy, but anywhere above a 5-point lead, I think it is highly, highly, highly unlikely that whatever the machinations you think are there, that the Democrats would not nominate Bernie Sanders, who presumably at that point would have gotten the plurality of votes, right? So if it's like a 38 percentage point or 33 percentage points for Bernie Sanders and the next person is 23%, or even 25%, I think it's highly unlikely.
We'll see.
Yeah, no, we'll see. But I think it's highly unlikely because you would really have to be completely deluded to think that it would not fracture the Democratic Party and that the odds of whoever you nominate of winning don't go down substantially. And I also think like that person, who it is, does not want to be the person to lose to Trump, particularly in that scenario, whether it's Bloomberg or anybody else.
Well, and there's also probably a good chunk of those people who want to see Bernie lose to Trump.
Well, I think what is more likely, if Bernie goes in and he's got 32 percentage points and the next person has 28 percentage points, I think going into a second round of the convention is very possible. And frankly, look, those are the rules. Bernie, was asking superdelegates to flip for him. He didn't have the majority of votes going into the convention. I mean, those are the rules. They can do it. It's dumb. It's stupid. It's counterproductive, but they can do it. It's not cheating. That's just the way it was set up. But I think what is far more likely is that they just take a powder. That's what Chris Matthews is getting at here.
Out of left field. I'm wondering whether the Democratic moderates want Bernie Sanders to be president. I mean, that's maybe too exciting a question to raise. They don't like Trump at all. Do they want Bernie Sanders to take over the Democratic Party in perpetuity? Well, I mean, he takes it over. He sets the direction for the future of the party. Maybe they'd rather wait 4 years and put in a Democrat that they like.
That, I think, remember that question, because I think that is the answer. I think if Bernie Sanders wins the nomination, and I don't know how many of those people there are, And I don't know that they have the ability to make that much of a difference. But I suspect what they will do, because you got to remember, a lot of them are convinced that Bernie Sanders is not going to win. And I think they're just going to say, like, you know what? It's August. I'm heading to the south of France, or I'm going to, to wherever. I'm going to go to the islands, whatever it is. I'm taking a vacation. I'll be back in November. And, literally or figuratively. And I'm going to sit on my hands during this. That's what happened to Martha Coakley in Massachusetts. She came from the western part of Massachusetts. Now I think she's attorney. Now she won something. Didn't Coakley win something now? No, maybe she didn't. She ran for Senate against Scott Brown. She lost. It's a horrible race. That was to fill Ted Kennedy's seat. She came from the West. People didn't like her in the East, and they sat on their hands. Now, the dynamic in Massachusetts is very different than it is nationally. Martha Coakley did not have an independent source of funding and an infrastructure and whatnot. But
she was Attorney General of Massachusetts.
She was Attorney General, but that was after she had lost as Senate. And she works for Jewel now. But I think it's far more likely that a lot of these people will just say, Bernie's going to lose. I'm not going to help him win. And my withholding of my resources, fine, we'll deal with Trump for another 4 years, and then we'll get into office. And they're going to look at the added benefit of, like, then the left will have to shut up because they'll see that people don't want Bernie Sanders' program, and they'll see it as a win-win. That, to me, far more likely. Far, far, far more likely.
That's what the Republicans did with Trump.
I agree with you. I also think it's ironic that some of these same people were saying, you guys all have to get in line behind Hillary, vote blue no matter who, or else you are being a privileged asshole.
Absolutely. Of course.
And now we get to say it to them.
Well, yes.
In a nice way.
I would wait. Right.
Also, how many of them are there really?
Well, that's the thing. I think they overestimate their numbers and their relevance, because the fact of the matter is Bernie Sanders has his own mechanism to raise money. He has his own infrastructure. The Democratic Party's party structure is incredibly weak. The billionaires out there can fund, it's not like Trump needs their money. I think that they're going to try and do, I hope that's the calculation they make, because I think they're overestimating their power and Sanders' weakness. But I think that they're smart enough to realize, like, we cannot overturn the win if somebody is won by a clear plurality. What clear constitutes, I think, is somewhere around like above 5 percentage points. But maybe it should be, that's why he's really going to win by like 8.
Well, I don't think there's any establishment consensus on anything right now, which is part of why Bernie is doing so well. It created an opening. I'm sure there's a fraction of the establishment that wants to burn down their own institution in order to stop Bernie from being the nominee, but perhaps a larger fraction that's more risk averse.
Yeah, I think risk averse is usually the way to go with. I mean, because who wants to be that candidate? Honestly, look, if you're Buttigieg and you're Klobuchar, you're like, I've got a future in this. If you're Biden, you've got to be savvy enough, I think, to be like, I don't know if I come out of a split, like a split convention like this, and I could win. Bloomberg's got to be savvy enough to do that. Warren's got to be savvy enough to do that. I mean, I don't know. I'd be shocked.
They might not be thinking that clearly.
We'll see. We'll see.
I mean, it's possible Buttigieg just wants a long-term job on MSNBC after this or something, and that would be a fine way to get it.
Losing the presidency?
Yeah. I mean, look, you said it yourself. MSNBC is like increasingly an out-of-touch kind of neoliberal dead-end station.
I just think the last thing you want to do in that situation
is be the guy who gave Trump a second term.
Exactly. I wouldn't want to do that. All right, who do we have? I guess we're going to get to the Rick Grinnell stuff. And Okay, yeah, let's do that, and then let's do the Trump 2 thing. The number 20. What's this Rubio one? Okay, here is Marco Rubio. Little Marco. This is Rubio talking about, Bernie Sanders apparently went on and on 60 Minutes and said something positive about Cuba after saying, of course, it's an authoritarian regime and it's bad in that respect. Very similar to what Barack Obama had said in the past. A completely uncontroversial position, except for the fact that they really want to paint a narrative of Bernie as some type of like secret, Soviet sleeper cell that was never recalled.
That's definitely not a way to win the White House.
Right. Here is Marco Rubio. I don't know where his camera is. Maybe somebody's holding it there for him. It's sort of weird. Maybe get one of those cams. Here it is. Car cams.
Bottom line is that unless the Democratic establishment steals it from him, Bernie Sanders, a Democratic socialist, is going to be the Democratic nominee for president. And that's a really big deal because Democratic socialism sounds benign, but at the core of Democratic socialism is Marxism. And at the core of Marxism is this fake offer that if you turn over more of your individual freedom, we're going to provide you security. We're going to provide you free healthcare. We're going to provide you free education. But the problem is that when they can't deliver on it or when you're not happy with it, you don't get your freedoms back. And by freedoms, I don't just mean elections. I'm talking about the right to choose your own doctor, the right to make healthcare decisions for yourself, what your kids learn in school, what schools they go to. All that stuff you lose control over, and you don't get it back just because the security they promised you didn't happen. So that's what we're on the verge of having to decide here in this country. It's the reason why people flee countries that have this stuff. It's a big deal for America, and I hope people start waking up to that reality.
As you know, there's a huge exodus of people from Denmark.
Does he think that people can choose what their kids learn in school now?
Or that they willy-nilly can just like get, the whole point of why there's so many people who support single payer is that they can't go in and at the whim and go see a doctor.
I think that message is mainly meant for a few older Florida donors.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah. At the same time, like, I'm still not sure if it was a good idea for Bernie to identify himself as a socialist because A, he's not, and I'm not sure what he really stands to gain from doing that. And I say that as a socialist.
That was my argument at the time, but it is what it is. I mean, I think that they're going to have a tough time demonizing. I think like Florida is largely out of reach for Bernie. A lot about what you said earlier in that you've got a state full of retirees. And if you're retiring to Florida, you're not necessarily wealthy. A lot of people living on a fixed income down there. But you probably have come from, just statistically speaking, a wealthier class.
And a lot of the Cuban American population in Florida is probably not going to vote for a Democrat based on previous results.
That's always been the case anyways, like you say. All right, lastly, let's do this. On Ring of Fire, I think I interviewed, it was some time ago, some activists who were trying to keep the Olympics out of LA. And we have spoken, Dave Zirin wrote a book about it, about the Olympics when it went to Rio. And I think also had written about when it went to Sochi. And what happens is the Olympics end up being an excuse to gentrify neighborhoods, to essentially soak the public for resources that get put into private enterprises, to displace people. It is used as an excuse in which to round up and eject people, literally eject them, as opposed to providing like housing for them. And Donald Trump is totally down for that type of project. Here he is talking about L.A.
Clean up LA's homeless situation before these games, and what do you see as the federal government's role in doing that?
Well, we had no role, but we're really taking a role in it. I see it. I see what's happening to LA. I see what's happening to San Francisco. I see what's happening to some great cities, and I've said to my people, whether they like it or not, we're going to have to do something. So we're right now working in LA. They're also contacting San Francisco. They have to clean it up. You have needles, you have things that we don't want to discuss all over the streets, flowing into the oceans, and yet beaches, and it shouldn't happen. And if they can't do it themselves, we're going to do it. The federal government's going to take it over. We're going to do it. So we're working right now with LA in particular, I would say, and the others are also sort of wanting to work along with us. But it's not thinkable what they've allowed to happen to these cities. Incredible.
Like what do they what is he? It's as if like there's like this this roving disease of homelessness that like they didn't take the vaccination, as opposed to it's human beings who have no place to live.
No, they're doing it on purpose to ruin your city.
Let's all go to LA and fuck that place up. As opposed to, oh, I lost my job, I have nowhere to live, or oh, I have an addiction and I have no place to live, or oh, I've been abused at home and I now have no place to live. Oh, someone got cancer and we ran out of money and got evicted.
Might as well go ruin an American city.
Let's band together and spend our resources, what little we have left, trying to ruin LA.
I mean, it's a dog whistle, obviously, for poor people, brown people. Like, when we talk about homelessness as a problem, we're talking about the actual state of not having a home. Trump is talking about the people.
Yes. Yes.
Like, he doesn't mean we're going to fight homelessness by giving everybody a home.
That's right. Anything but. All right, folks. Thanks very much for joining us. We had about 10,000 on YouTube today. A couple thousand on Twitch, I think it was, too. Hop over to the PodSave YouTube channel and suggest to people they come and check out a real show.
Oh, preview for tomorrow. Guess who is calling Bernie Sanders as Jewish as a ham sandwich?
What?
He's Jewish.
I know who it is.
I bet Sam knows who it is.
Is it Ben Shapiro?
It is Ben Shapiro.
Oh, that's going to be delightful.
He doesn't keep kosher. No, I guess Bernie doesn't.
Oh, no.
I got the story. I got a good story about the first time I actually had like a dinner ham. I'd never had it until I was like 17. Yeah. Did not end well.
It's the best part of Thanksgiving.
Did not end well. All right, folks. Who has ham at Thanksgiving? Don't you have turkey?
Got all of it. Ham, turkey, chicken.
That is so goyish.
Got so many types of meats.
How many candied salads do you have at your...
There's some Coke salad, which is like it's. I don't want to describe it.
I'm just picturing
it's like Jello, Coke, and like some fruit and stuff in it.
Really?
Thanksgiving at Matt's house, you just carve like a giant M&M or something.
And I guess I would go for Christmas at my ex-wife's house, family's house, and every salad was candied in some fashion.
I don't really go for the salads. I'm mashed potatoes and meat kind of
guy.
Well,
and the salads out there are basically just like marshmallows and potatoes.
A lot of that crap. I don't like sweet potatoes.
Folks, see you tomorrow.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the light bulb. But finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light shining bright. I get somewhere the choice was made, for the option where you don't get paid, for the road that bends before it finally breaks you. I guess somehow I lost my drive.